Jian Wushuang stood up, indifferent as he said, 1,000 taels of gold. Quite a high price. Big brother, what are you saying? With your skills, how could you be caught by the city lord's mansion's lousy men? Lu Sentier consoled. He, however, paid no mind. Just found it somewhat amusing. The last time he was wanted, it was in the Western Sea. Back then, it was 100 billion godstones. Thinking about it, Jian Wushuang seemed to understand something. This scene seemed somewhat familiar. Back then, he had Gong Miaoi and Bai Junwang by his side. And now he had 13 Yang and Lu Sanner. Wasn't this too coincidental? If it wasn't a coincidence, the one behind must know his details very well. Divine General Main shouldn't be so lame, right? So, which old monster planned all this? The demon sealing space had been transformed like this. What was the purpose? When passing through the first bridge, it corresponded to the soul. The second bridge, if he guessed correctly, tested the mind. Jian Wushuang didn't think much more, turned around, and entered the house. Those people outside wouldn't find him for a while, but with the guidance of the person behind him, it was only a matter of time. Instead of benefiting others, it's better to give this 1,000 taels of gold reward to 13 Yang and Lu Sanner. Although he couldn't see through the intentions of these two, it wouldn't last too long. He had only just met Lu Sanner, who turned out to be a gambling rogue. Meanwhile, 13 Yang was a worldly woman. Who wouldn't be tempted by 1,000 taels of gold? As Jian Wushuang pondered over other matters, Lu Sentier followed suit and leaned in, whispering to him, Big brother, I think something's not right with that girl. How about... Lu Sentier gestured by mimicking a throat-slashing motion. Jian Wushuang displayed a slightly indulgent expression, nodding ever so slightly. All right, I'll go buy some good meat. I still have some silver on me. Lu Sentier shouted, as if afraid others wouldn't hear. After Lu Sentier left, 13 Yang entered with a somewhat unpleasant expression. She said to Jian Wushuang, Where did you meet Lu Sanner? At the gambling den. Jian Wushuang replied. 13 Yang's expression turned even more grim. She quickly walked over, grabbed Jian Wushuang, and started walking out, saying as they went, Hurry! He must have gone to the authorities to report on you. You underestimate him too much. Jian Wushuang pulled out his arm, coming to a stop. Lu Sentier was a gambler. Faced with the choice between 1,000 gold and silver taels, he would surely choose the former, even if it meant taking a risk. This time, he wasn't going to the authorities. Instead, he was preparing to drug him. What he didn't expect was that 13 Yang would actually warn him. Could it be that the one orchestrating this wanted this woman to captivate him? That would be underestimating his determination. The debt of saving a life would be repaid. If he could leave this place, he would spare no effort to meet her, pull her out of this timeline, and give her a chance at a new life. But in this place, 1 + 1 = 2. He wouldn't hesitate to act. Even if it meant destroying this city, he would do it without hesitation. If you know what he's doing, why aren't you running? 13 Yang said in surprise. Jian Wushuang shook his head and spoke. Have you ever left this place? No. 13 Yang didn't understand what Jian Wushuang meant. Indeed, she had never left. The outside world was a vast wilderness, and apart from leaving Qingshan City, she had nowhere else to go. The farthest she had been was to the outskirts. Have you ever thought about going to the outside world? This place is too small. 13 Yang narrowed her eyes, looking at Jian Wushuang and asked, Are you suggesting that you want to take me away? Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded. 13 Yang continued, If we leave Qingshan City, where would we go? Anywhere. The world is so vast. Every place is a home. Why confine oneself to a single flower? Qingshan City is too oppressive. Since he arrived, Jian Wushuang has not encountered anything good. The sky was gradually darkening, and he wondered what this mundane world had experienced in the past. Without waiting for 13 Yang's response, Lu Sentier returned with wine. He carried 2 jars of wine and held a few packages of snacks. Big brother, the wine is here. He even exchanged a glance with Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang smiled knowingly. It was time to hit the road. Regardless of what these two thought, Jian Wushuang didn't blame them. After all, being manipulated throughout their lives, they had no choice. In the small courtyard, the three sat down. There were not many words, and the atmosphere was as oppressive as the weather in the city. Come on, let's have a toast. Jian Wushuang, sensing the tension in the air, slammed the bowl down and took a sip. Seeing Jian Wushuang drinking so heartily, Lu Sentier smiled and raised his wine bowl, joining in. Drinking, a pursuit that becomes more enjoyable the more you indulge. Not long after, 2 jars of wine were completely consumed. Lu Seiner's murderous intent surged as he glanced at Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, he stood up and, from behind, gripped 13 Yang's neck. You? 13 Yang's face turned crimson from being choked. Despite her attempts to speak, she kicked over the table in resistance. After a short while, she ceased to react. It was Lu Sarver's first time killing someone. Even though 13 Yang showed no signs of life, he was reluctant to release his grip, fearing she might not be completely dead. Jian Wushuang stood up, patted his shoulder and said, "Enough! She's already dead." Phew! Lu Sentier breathed heavily, releasing his arm. 13 Yang turned around, falling to the ground face up, staring with wide eyes. Startled, Lu Sentier plopped down on the floor. Jian Wushuang crouched down, patted his shoulder, and then asked in a low voice, "Do you want to come with me, or do you want 1,000 taels of gold?" Upon hearing these words, Lu Sarver hastily retreated, looking at Jian Wushuang with fear. Only now did he remember. Jian Wushuang should have fainted by now, right? Did the drug not work? In Jian Wushuang's bowl, he wiped a layer of soft tendon powder. Lu Sentier didn't know how to respond. His recent actions had raised suspicions in Jian Wushuang's mind, and he was at a loss about what to do now. Jian Wushuang looked at him and said calmly, "I understand. Come with me." Then, holding Lu Sanner, they left the small courtyard. Outside the courtyard, dozens of constables had gathered. Seeing Jian Wushuang coming out, they drew their swords one after another. "No need for trouble. Just give him the money. I'll go with you." Jian Wushuang threw Lu Sentier directly to the ground. The other party had made some moves. How could he not know? Even if he became immortal, he wasn't a fool. Any drug or poison in the wine he had just drunk was dissipated by thought power as soon as it went down. How could he fall into the hands of a mortal? Lu Sentier got up from the ground, hastily threw himself at one of the constables, and pointed at Jian Wushuang, shouting, "It's him! He killed Li Si." The constable pushed him away, sneering, "Thanks for that." As the words fell, a knife swung down, and Lu Sanner's head rolled on the ground. The constable shouted loudly, "Jian Wushuang, I have now killed your accomplice. Surrender quickly." What a joke. 1,000 taels of gold. How could it be shared with a gambler? Catching Jian Wushuang meant 1,000 taels of gold for them. Jian Wushuang was not surprised by this. At the time, if Lu Sanner were to say that he wanted 1,000 taels of gold, he would comply. These people couldn't kill him either. If Lu Sentier chose to leave this place with him, he would break free, and then extract the soul fragments of 13 Yang and Lu Sentier from this timeline. This would give them a chance to be reborn. It's time to end this. Jian Wushuang raised his hand, and a strand of golden sword appeared in it. A terrifying aura instantly swept through the heavens and earth. The old man who was fishing on the cloud-layered mountain felt the pressure and his expression changed. He shouted, "Kid, you dare!" Jian Wushuang threw out the golden sword, hands behind his back, a fierce wind blowing, yet he stood still. His hair fluttered with the burst of wind as he loudly declared, "Why wouldn't one dare?" Boom! The next moment, the bodies of the constables began to rupture, and the scene around Jian Wushuang shattered. Not only the people in the city, but the entire city itself trembled. The old man in the clouds wanted to intervene, but the figure of Divine General Main slowly approached, raising his hand to stop him. The Divine General reminded, "Lord of the Clouds, we must not interfere. He will destroy the entire space. This space is not like the universe space." Lord of the Clouds was somewhat anxious. The demon sound divine general's eyes narrowed, coldly saying, "You know this is a mortal space. This is your creation. If he can restore his strength, it's also because of you." Lord of the Clouds, whose name was Yunzhong, was also one of the 18 divine generals. Though of the same status as the demon sound divine general, there was a gap in their strength. Among the 18 divine generals, Divine General Main ranked higher, while he was at the bottom. Hearing the reminder from Divine General Main, Lord of the Clouds could only swallow his anger. He watched as Jian Wushuang in the mortal world space ascended in broad daylight, leaving the original location. Swish, swish, swish. 3 figures appeared in a vast palace. Not only did Jian Wushuang come out, but Dongsheng and Wanyan also arrived at this place together. "I was in the underwater world. How did I end up here?" Dongsheng wondered. Wanyan's expression was equally serious. He had originally been in the cellar. Jian Wushuang, however, remained calm. There was just one thing he hadn't anticipated by breaking the mundane space. He unintentionally brought these 2 along. After arriving at the treasure hall, the 3 didn't immediately embark on exploration. Instead, they recounted their own experiences. Upon hearing everyone's stories, Jian Wushuang realized he had the worst of it. One became the Dragon King, commanding winds and rains in the underwater world, while the other wreaked havoc in the cellar. Only Jian Wushuang fell into the mortal mundane world, reduced to a beggar. "I was so close to clearing it, what a pity!" Emperor Dongsheng regretted it. Jian Wushuang vaguely glossed over his own experiences. He feared that if he revealed the truth, these 2 would be compelled to kill him. They were on the verge of clearing, while Jian Wushuang endured torment in the oppressive city. "Never mind. This place is strange. Let's first figure out what's going on here." Wanyan shook his head, dispelling the group's disappointment. They turned their attention to the treasure hall, another cultivation site. However, this one was adorned with opulence, everything shining brightly. The 3 were cautious, still haunted by their encounter with the blood demon last time, which had left them terrified. However, the blood demon had consumed their flesh and blood as a preparation for them to enter the mundane mortal world. This time, there shouldn't be any danger in the cultivation site. Buzz! A sudden hum echoed. The 3 immediately felt something was amiss. "How dare you intrude into my territory?" A gloomy voice rang out, startling the trio. Jian Wushuang, in particular, stepped back. Above the palace, a majestic dragon slowly descended, its enormous eyes fixated on them. "This is the land of the Dark King. Trespassers shall die." The colossal dragon's body began to shrink, transforming into a figure standing before them, over 2 meters tall. Dongsheng sensed the oppressive aura emanating from the figure and quickly explained, "Senior, we are inheritors here to receive the inheritance. We were unintentionally transported here. Please forgive us." "Humph." Still trying to explain, the dragon-turned-human flapped its wings, sending the 3 flying. They were no match at all. Jian Wushuang cursed inwardly. It must be because he had destroyed that mortal space. Someone behind the scenes sought revenge, leading them to be transported here. The Dragon Man, with just his aura, nearly killed them. He walked towards them, a body covered in red scales, each emitting an aura comparable to the perfectly cultivated divine body. This Dragon Man wasn't a puppet but a powerful practitioner on the path of a divine body. Jian Wushuang quickly discerned the opponent's details. However, knowing more at this point was useless. They lacked the strength to fight back. It seemed they were destined to die. "Senior Main, are you trying to lead us to our deaths?" Jian Wushuang couldn't help but shout in anger. What he did in the mortal world was like a slap on Main's face, yes, but was it necessary to go this far? He could gather a bit of mental power. That wasn't his fault. It could only be said that the person who arranged that world was too twisted. Or maybe he was too powerful. Only when the latter spoke did it sound a bit arrogant, but Jian Wushuang didn't dwell on it. Hearing Jian Wushuang mention the name of the demon sound divine general, the Dragon Man paused, stopped in his tracks, and exclaimed, "Main? Do you know the Divine General? I do. The three of us were sent here by Divine General Mayin. Jian Wushuang explained hastily when he saw the other party halt. We came to inherit the legacy. If you don't believe it, you can ask the Demon Sound Divine General. Dongsheng and Wan Yen, having followed suit, quickly nodded. The Dragon Man was somewhat puzzled. He was the strongest war god under the throne of the Dark King, and the Dark King was a universe master under the command of Qixin. He was aware of the 18 divine generals. However, all the Qixin had fallen for an unknown period, and he had been in a constant slumber. How was it possible for someone to appear here now? The sound of space being torn resonated, and an old man walked out from the crack, leaning on a cane. Dragon God, long time no see. It's you, Lord Yunzhong, the Dragon God exclaimed. The newcomer was the old man who orchestrated things in the mortal world. Is what they said true? Dragon God still found it hard to believe. He distinctly remembered that everyone had fallen. The Lord of the Clouds ignored him, instead looking at Jian Wushuang and the others, apologizing with a smile. Sorry for being late. Originally, I thought you wouldn't be here so soon. Unexpectedly, there was a little situation in the middle, and you were transported here ahead of time. I forgot to brief Dragon God about this. Dongsheng and Wan Yen quickly bowed, showing a respectful demeanor. Jian Wushuang didn't buy into this. He felt it was premeditated. Lord Yunzhong arrived neither too early nor too late. He appeared only after they revealed their identities. However, upon realizing that the other party was Lord Yunzhong, Jian Wushuang was surprised. This was also one of the 18 divine generals. It seemed that more than one divine general had been revived. Fuego's appearance had cost Jinling a fortune, resurrecting so many powerful beings. The elders in the Elder Palace were of mediocre strength, with only 3 Supreme Peak experts resurrected, and their consumption of the origin source of the Qixin Temple was not significant. However, these divine generals were ultimate emperors. Resurrecting one of them consumed more origin source than 1,000 ordinary Supreme Peak beings. Lord Yunzhong, how did you come to this place? Dragon God's expression was somewhat embarrassed. This was the land where the Dark King perished. Back when they were cannon fodder for the Qixin Temple, it was understandable. But now, bringing a few heirs to this place, what was the purpose? Dragon God never liked the Qixin Temple. In ancient times, they had to handle all the dirty work for the Qixin Temple. The 3 divine masters of the core level and the disciples of the Qixin were spared from doing anything and enjoyed everything. Yunzhong Jun's brows slightly furrowed. He already couldn't stand this hybrid species, creatures born of dragons and humans, and now they dared to question him? He was one of the 18 divine generals. In ancient times, even the universe masters had to give him face. I called you Dragon God as a sign of respect. If it weren't for these little guys here, I would courteously address you as a mere waste. Yunzhong Jun was unabashedly arrogant. Then he revealed a smile and apologized. Sorry, I accidentally blurted out your real name. Ha ha ha. Jian Wushuang and the other 2 trembled in the corner. These 2 seemed to be at odds. Could they suddenly start fighting? Dragon God's face turned ashen. Lord Yunzhong, enjoying the sight of his opponent's anger, spoke. By the way, the Dark King has been dead for so many years, and the treasures here should not go to waste. I came this time to have you open this place and make it one of the treasuries of the Qixin Temple. Hand over the key. Yunzhong was high and mighty, showing no intention of negotiation. It was a complete command. In ancient times, the Dark King was just a peripheral figure under the Qixin. The core figures were those who joined the Qixin in the beginning. Later, when the Qixin reached its peak, many sought refuge, including the Dark King. Back then, the status of divine generals like Yunzhong soared, naturally looking down on those universe masters who joined later. If their strength was sufficient, it was acceptable. Otherwise, the weak had even less say. Among the universe masters, there were the strong and the weak, just like the emperors, ranging from the tier 1 to 6 and then to Supreme Peak. The divisions were clear. You seek death. Dragon God couldn't bear it any longer and angrily shouted. Insulting him was one thing, but daring to insult his master, the Dark King. Even if the opponent was a divine general, he would take action. Yun Zhong had no intention of negotiating with the other party. What he wanted was for the other party to make the first move, and then he could take action to gracefully take over this Dao arena. Arrogant. A bastard. Dares to attack me? Yun Zhong lightly shook the cane in his hand, directly dispelling the dragon god's methods. Then, a dragon roar that shook the heavens and earth resounded. Dragon god's figure transformed into its true form, a huge candle dragon, with 2 feet, 2 hands, and a pair of sky-shrouding wings. Dragon god above the treasure hall was unconcerned, even revealing a hint of disdain. Dragon god's strength was indeed impressive, and he possessed a top-notch divine body, even stronger than the former by Junwang. However, Yun Zhong was still an ultimate emperor. That cane, invisible to others but Jian Wushuang could see, definitely surpassed the power of eternal treasures, likely being a universe treasure. The position of the 18 divine generals was lofty, and Qixin was a great master of refining treasures. Universe treasures were plentiful, and it was normal to give them to one's core subordinates. An ultimate emperor, coupled with a universe treasure, the power emanating from him made people feel a sense of suffocation. Insect. Yun Zhong made a move again, this time not as casual as the last, but truly unleashed all his strength. Although disdainful of Dragon God, his strength was undeniable, not to be considered weak. Crack. Behind Yun Zhong, a huge Dao image appeared, directly seizing Dragon God's neck, rendering him motionless. Daring to attack the divine general of Qixin Temple, on behalf of Lord Jinling, I shall send you to the second prison. Splash. Another crack in space appeared, and this time Wuxia emerged from it. Brother Wuxia, I'll trouble you. Yun Zhong smiled. The prisons of Qixin Temple were located at the very bottom of the god's tomb and were not accessible to ordinary people. Those with weak strength couldn't even enter. The 4 temple masters all had their own tasks, and others were also uneasy. Some lacked the strength, and if they didn't send others in, they might end up sending themselves. Therefore, only Wuxia could handle such matters. Leave it to me. Wuxia took out a wind bag, directly sucking Dragon God into it. Then, turning to Jian Wushuang, who was also present, he said to Yun Zhong, Brother Yun, this little guy Jian Wushuang and I have some fate. Please take care of him. Rest assured. Yun Zhong's eyes turned, and he agreed verbally. Then I'll take my leave. Wuxia clasped his fists, then nodded at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was also pleasantly surprised, hastily bowing to express his gratitude. He didn't expect Wuxia to give him such face. He, however, was unaware that Wuxia had long learned about Jian Wushuang's identity from Jinling. One of the most dazzling figures in this era, of course, deserved to be well acquainted with. In the future, Jian Wushuang might become one of the mighty figures of the Qixin Temple. Take, for example, on the Grave God Mountain, among the ultimate emperors who were relatively eye-catching, only Hu Qing stood out, surpassing many of the same level. The Dao Lord who practiced the light Dao on that mountain has yet to break through, just like Jian Wushuang. If Jian Wushuang surpasses him as well, among the same batch, the 3 ultimate emperors who have perfectly integrated their Daos will undoubtedly be the most dazzling figures in the future. At present, Hu Qing is considered to be at the forefront among the same batch. Above him is Shang because he is already an ultimate emperor, so he is not on the same level as them. After all, Shang has created his own universe secret technique, and his grasp of becoming the universe master is greater. However, in the realm of the origin source Dao, he is not as complete as Hu Qing. He initially succeeded in the Dao merge at the 8th level. Later, when he reached the same level, he did not possess the formidable origin source like Hu Qing. However, both Hu Qing and Jian Wushuang can go against the natural order because of the influence of Qixin Temple. Initially, Shang explored and walked the path to becoming an ultimate emperor on his own. Moreover, in the external world, without anyone's guidance, he created the universe secret technique and comprehended the universe origin source. Shang comprehended the original universe's origin source, which is purer than the universe origin source among cultivators. Just based on this point, among all the inheritors in Qixin Temple, Shang ranks first. His status is unshakable, unless someone becomes the universe master before Shang took that step. To surpass him would be too difficult. Anyway, whether Jian Wushuang has the assurance or not, he cultivated dual origin sources. He wasn't even at the perfected or complete stage of Tao Lord, let alone catching up with Shang's footsteps. Amongst the contemporaries, perhaps only Hu Qing had such an opportunity. Alternatively, there was the extraordinary talent in the transformation Tao, Broly. His progress was even more astonishing. There were rumors about him at Yuanyang Lake. A native inheritor appeared on the Grave God Mountain, and upon arriving, he broke through to the Tier 6 Emperor. Moreover, there were some interesting incidents during his breakthrough. Broly went to the Grave God Mountain not as eager for inheritance as other native powerhouses but with the intention of descending the mountain to find his missing father. Jinling set up a formation, if a Tier 6 Emperor couldn't descend the mountain. Broly, being a ruthless individual, directly accelerated the flow of time to 10,000 times its normal speed, breaking through in just 10,000 years, while only 10 years passed in the outside world. How could this not be shocking? When Jian Wushuang first heard about it, he was even more astonished. Because it was he who ordered the members of the Kuei organization to kill Bukuin. At that time, Bukuin was just a nobody, and he didn't pay any attention to him. Now, unexpectedly, trouble had been stirred up. Fortunately, Jinling explained the situation, telling Broly that his father had died at the hands of the Kuei organization. This was not a lie. Indeed, he was killed by a Tier 5 Emperor of the Kuei organization. Currently, Broly was filled with rage, slaughtering in the Earth realm, issuing wanted orders for the powerhouses of the Kuei organization in all directions. Anyone associated with the Kuei organization was killed by him. Jinling also promised him that as long as he killed all the members of the Kuei organization in the Earth realm, his father would be resurrected. To resurrect a Tier 5 Emperor with a half-formed origin source, especially a native powerhouse of the Qixin Temple, was like finding a needle in a haystack for Jinling. The whole situation was nothing. It was like treating Broly as a mere killing machine. Jian Wushuang shook his head, choosing not to dwell on such matters. Now, Dragon God has been captured and thrown into the second prison, similar to Shanjun was once banished. The environment there could make even Supreme Peak experts fall. There was no way out in this lifetime. Well, Dragon God offended a divine general of Qixin Temple, so it was truly unavoidable. Jian Wushuang wanted to rescue Shanjun, but currently, there was no clue. It was a good opportunity to ask Lord Yunzhong, who was a divine general. Junior Jian Wushuang pays respects to Senior Yunzhong. Jian Wushuang showed great respect. Last time, he offended the other party badly. Without showing due respect, given the ruthless character of the divine general, there would be no leniency. Currently, he was still within the other party's territory. Dragon God, a powerful being, was suppressed effortlessly, akin to dealing with a small chicken. Dongshang and Wanyan had long been waiting in a respectful posture for Lord Yunzhong to speak. It was their first time encountering such high-level experts. In the original universe, it was troublesome to meet a Tier 6 Emperor, let alone Supreme Peak experts. Only after coming to Qixin Temple did they encounter several Supreme Peak experts. This was also the first time witnessing the clash between Supreme Peak experts. The powerful aura directly suppressed the two of them. When Jinling issued the challenge, stating that as long as they could reach Grave God Mountain with their own abilities, they would be nurtured into Supreme Peak, it didn't have much impact on them at that time. They didn't understand much about Supreme Peak. But now, seeing the Supreme Peak in action, they were determined to exert 100 or even 1,000 times more effort after going out, aiming to become a Tier 6 Emperor and head to the Grave God Mountain as soon as possible. TSK, little ones, this place is now all yours. How many treasures you can obtain depends on your luck. Lord Yunzhong resumed his amiable demeanor, resembling a kind old man. However, Jian Wushuang couldn't believe it. This was the Tao arena where the Dark King transcended. It must be heavily guarded, and the treasures were stored in the treasure vault. Opening the vault required a key, but how were they going to get one? This old man was indeed holding a grudge against him for destroying the mortal world back then. Originally, Jian Wushuang wanted to inquire about the second prison, but now it seemed that the other party wouldn't truly tell him. They might even deceive him. Jian Wushuang didn't bother pursuing it and could only respectfully see the old man off. Before leaving, Lord Yunzhong looked at Jian Wushuang and said, "You are Jian Wushuang, right? I've heard about you. Your future is promising. Work hard." The treasures in this mustard seed were left by Dragon God. The three of you can split them. Saying this, he tossed the mustard seed to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was delighted at first, but then his face froze. Before Lord Yunzhong left, he quickly handed the mustard seed to Emperor Dongsheng, simultaneously praying in his heart, "Please trust me." In the mustard seed given by Lord Yunzhong, there were nothing but some worthless items. If he had accepted the mustard seed, things would have been unclear. Emperor Dongsheng was somewhat surprised, thinking that Jian Wushuang was being too polite. Since Lord Yunzhong handed it to Jian Wushuang, it should be for him to share with the rest. He had originally planned to be polite and hoped that Jian Wushuang wouldn't be too greedy, at least giving them a share. After all, the fate of the mustard seed in whose hands it ended up was a matter of uncertainty. With Lord Yunzhong departing, the truth might remain elusive, and dividing the spoils would be an open-ended affair. Jian Wushuang took the initiative to hand over the mustard seed to Dongsheng, a decision that Wang Yan understood well. Jian Wushuang's face darkened as he stood in place, not uttering a word. Only after Lord Yunzhong's departure did he speak. "Stop staring. There's nothing in here. Do you really think that old man would be so benevolent?" He wasn't afraid that Lord Yunzhong would be secretly monitoring him. Indeed, he might be. Lord Yunzhong probably wanted to witness Jian Wushuang being pranked. However, Jian Wushuang wasn't falling for that, especially when he heard Jian Wushuang directly curse at him. Lord Yunzhong, who was lurking in the shadows, blinked and left. If he didn't scheme against Jian Wushuang this time, there would be a next time. As long as Jian Wushuang didn't surpass him, there would be plenty of opportunities for calculations and schemes. Inside the treasure hall, Dongsheng held the mustard seed, at a loss for what to do. Stammering, he said, Isn't this a joke? Wushuang, you must vouch for me." Finishing his words, he handed the mustard seed to Wang Yan. Wang Yan's thought power probed into it, and his expression instantly froze. He glanced at Dongsheng and then at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang spoke, "Brother Wang Yan, if you don't believe it, I can let you search my mustard seed." No, that's not what I mean. One just find it puzzling why a peak expert like you would play tricks on us." Wang Yan hurriedly waved his hands. Even harboring doubts in his heart, he dared not search Jian Wushuang's belongings. Jian Wushuang was a prominent figure among the inheritors. Although he had not visited the Grave God Mountain, his name resounded loudly on the mountain. Especially after the journey to the Western Sea, he displayed a combat power not inferior to that of a Tier 5 emperor, shocking many. Wang Yan and Dongsheng were both emperors who had achieved ordinary origin source levels. However, Jian Wushuang represented the ultimate Tao, a future existence much stronger than them. How could one afford to offend him? There's nothing impossible. These veteran powerhouses have just been resurrected after countless eons of silence. Who knows if there might be some strange quirks? Jian Wushuang sighed. He hadn't expected the other party to hold such a grudge. After their group got a beating from Dragon God, one would think that would be the end of it, but the old man even schemed against him before leaving. Moreover, leaving them in the early stages of the Dark King's treasure hunt. Wasn't that a joke? They wondered where to look. Dongsheng didn't dare to directly speak ill of Yunzhong Jun, so he had to tactfully say, "Forget it. Maybe that senior is also not aware of it." Wang Yan on the side was a bit unhappy and said to Dongsheng, "Are you implying that we're deceiving a gentleman? Do we have the heart of a villain?" "L didn't say that." Dongsheng quickly waved his hands. "Let's search this place first. See if there are any special treasures." Jian Wushuang redirected the conversation to the main topic. This was the Tao arena of the Dark King. Even if there were no treasures, Relying on the environment here, cultivation was much faster than outside, and time couldn't be wasted. Dao friend Wushuang is right. Let's first understand the situation here. Dongsheng also followed suit, starting to search around. Swish! Jian Wushuang soared into the air. Above the palace, the dwelling place of Dragon God, there was a jade platform of 10,000 feet. Seeing that jade platform, Jian Wushuang's eye sockets contracted. He was very familiar with the aura inside. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have found out. Because the aura here contained the origin source of the universe, suppressing the origin source within that jade platform. A universe crystal. Jian Wushuang felt ecstatic in his heart. A universe crystal the size of 10,000 feet. It was more precious than the universe godstone. A universe crystal or cosmic crystal of 10,000 feet was made up of universe godstones with 1,000,000 feet. To refine a universe crystal, one needed to spend tens of thousands of universe godstones. This kind of universe crystal was generally used by universe masters to restore their origin source. This 10,000 feet universe crystal was invaluable. Upon reaching the top, Jian Wushuang directly collected it. The three of them searched separately, and whoever found the treasure would naturally belong to them. Jian Wushuang restrained his excitement. These universe crystals were the most significant treasures he had gained this time. With them, he didn't need the spatial origin source to reach the realm of a black hole. He could elevate the extreme Tao to perfection. Although the origin source here was not the origin source of the universe master of the original universe, it evolved from them, and its power was comparable. After putting away the universe crystals, Jian Wushuang didn't linger but continued searching in other directions. As he proceeded, just in the dwelling place of Dragon God, he found many rare treasures. Though their values were unknown, the auras above them were not weak. For instance, a teapot contained an eternal aura. After searching Dragon God's dwelling place, Jian Wushuang went to other areas. The three deliberately avoided each other, maintaining a harmonious atmosphere. In no time, everything in the main hall was taken. All three wore pleased expressions. It seemed the harvest was quite good. Especially Dongsheng, he couldn't stop smiling. Haha! There are indeed many treasures. That senior didn't deceive us. Dongsheng exclaimed, taking out a jar from the mustard seed. It emitted a peculiar fragrance. Wanyan was curious, and he leaned over and sniffed, unable to resist using his thought power to examine it. Seeing this, Dongsheng quickly moved the jar aside and said, "What's the rush? Since I took it out, you're naturally entitled to a share." "Was this jar found here?" Jian Wushuang asked. "Yes, it was placed in a corner, and I searched carefully and happened to discover it." Dongsheng smiled. Wanyan was a bit curious and quickly said, "Why don't you open it and see what it is? It seems to be wine. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken it out. If it's wine, let's drink it together." Dongshin's words made Wanyan give him a thumbs up and praise. "Brother Dongshin, in the original universe, what I admire most about you is that you never forget the benefits for us, your old brothers. Go away, last time you said you admired Jutian the most. Later, when you saw Shang at the Qishan temple, you said you admired him the most. The things you say, who would believe them?" Dongshin said unkindly. However, Wanyan didn't mind. Since they could share, that meant they were good brothers. Jian Wushuang was also curious. The three of them sat together and began to study the things in the altar. After opening the lid on top, the strange smell became even stronger. Wanyan had already taken out the wine glasses, directly manipulating a strand of thought power to draw out the liquid and pour it into 3 glasses. They handed them out one by one. Jian Wushuang took it and thanked them but didn't rush to drink. He felt that the smell was a bit strange. Although he wasn't afraid of poison, their divine bodies were strong, and even if they were poisoned, they wouldn't die. Dongshin didn't think too much and raised his glass, drinking it in one gulp. Then he grinned and said, "This taste is a bit strong. It's strong liquor." "Oh, really?" Wanyan also drank it in one gulp, then licked his lips and said with lingering delight, "This is good wine. The strong experts from ancient times really know how to enjoy." Jian Wushuang didn't drink for a long time. Instead, he activated his mighty thought power to analyze the particles in the liquid. He wanted to see what it contained. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel at ease drinking it. Upon careful analysis, Jian Wushuang found that this seemed to be not wine. The divine power contained in it was more like the blood of a divine beast. But that wasn't right. In the bloodstream, the aura of the physical body should not be this weak. It's not blood. Yet it contains the power of the body, and the aura is faint. This indicates that these liquids are emitted from the body. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang disdainfully put down the wine glass. Wang Yan and Dongshin crouched on the ground, raised their heads in surprise, and asked, "What's wrong? Doesn't it suit your taste? Both of you, it's better to drink less of this stuff." Jian Wushuang was smiling inside, but he couldn't bear to tell them the truth. The face of the two peak-level Tier 5 emperors was still important. In the outside world, they were ancestors of various major forces. If this were to be revealed, it would be a loss of face. They probably already had the heart to kill Jian Wushuang. It was necessary to silence him. This liquid is very likely to be the urine of that dragon god. Although it is urine, dragon god is an extraordinary figure, and his divine body is probably more than 70,000-fold. Even if it's his urine, it might be somewhat helpful to cultivators. Although not substantial assistance, being able to strengthen the body is not bad, at least it's not harmful. As for advising them to drink less, it's because the yang energy contained in this thing is very strong, and Jian Wushuang is afraid that these two individuals won't be able to control it. Wang Yan wiped his mouth, nodded, and said, "Indeed, I've drunk so much, and my strength hasn't increased. Instead, the pure yang energy in my body is extremely vigorous. What's wrong? Do you need to vent your anger when you go out?" Dongshin joked. Dongshin rolled his eyes. Could he really say such a thing? At the same time, he also put away the jar on the ground. Since it's not of much help, there's no point in drinking this stuff. Did you two find any exits during your search just now? Jian Wushuang changed the topic and brought up the main issue. Currently, they faced a difficult problem: how to get out. Being in this realm, cultivation was indeed swift, but the assistance was limited. One still had to venture beyond. Dongshin and Wang Yan exchanged glances, both shaking their heads. Just when the trio was oblivious to their misunderstanding, a massive Tao image descended from the apex of the treasure hall, resembling a convergence of celestial phenomena and a divine cauldron. The three hastily retreated. "Like sending me a pillow just when I'm feeling sleepy," Jian Wushuang sighed inwardly. Even if Lord Yunzhong looked down on them, he wouldn't embezzle the original rewards. After crossing the second bridge, there should be some substantial improvement at least. Well, it was coming soon. Another Tao image appeared, but this time it was the Tao image of the Dark King, the Universe Master. This assistance was much more significant. Comprehending a fragmented universe origin source in the outside world was challenging. But here, they were given a true-to-life Tao image, containing the complete Dark King origin source. "You have only 10 days. Cherish them?" a majestic voice echoed. Not Yun Zhongjun this time, but Divine General Main. 10 days. The three exchanged glances, and in an instant, they all found cushions and sat down cross-legged. Their time was truly limited. 10 days had to be seized. Don't underestimate these 10 days. With the complete origin source of a universe master before them, even a fool could make breakthroughs. For Jian Wushuang, this origin source was crucial. With this origin source, he could refine his own origin source C with the universe crystals he obtained. His current origin source C was at the level of the Tao Lord, the origin source of the Tao. To transform it into the origin source C of space, he needed to reach the Emperor level. This time, he aimed to break through the 9th level of the extreme Tao, even reaching perfection. Let's see what it's like after achieving perfection in the extreme Tao. Who? Jian Wushuang closed his eyes, and an avatar descended into the origin source C. There were very few origin source fragments left in the current origin source C. Most had been assimilated into it. Splash! Countless universe crystals appeared before him. Jian Wushuang stepped directly onto them, using the crystals as a small boat. Death King's origin source. Jian Wushuang, amidst the sea of his own origin source, pierced through with a single glance, directly locking onto the Death King's origin source within the Tao image. It was the origin source of the Tao of Death, a unique great Tao. Death and destruction were intertwined, and that Death King was once a peerless genius who almost stepped into the ranks of the ultimate beings. However, there was still a slight disparity between death and destruction. After becoming the universe master, his strength fell slightly short. Jian Wushuang didn't know much about the origin source of death. After all, it was a rare and special origin source. However, grasping the mysteries of space and time within it was the key to advancement. Delving into it, Jian Wushuang immediately felt the sea of his own origin source trembling. No one dared to face death directly. Even Jian Wushuang instinctively trembled. The terrifying aura approached, but having experienced too much, he had long learned to move against the wind. Within the space, everything was encompassed, a breath of the revival of all things. However, compared to this spatial origin source, Jian Wushuang's space was more genuine. It was the cosmic space, but when compared to Jian Wushuang, it was like the emperors of the original universe compared to the emperors of the four great secret realms. Still fell short. Jian Wushuang's was more perfect, the convergence of countless heavenly spaces forming something tangible, like a real world. Once it descended, it would become a domain. He had a premonition that if he could become the universe master, his one-thought universe would likely truly become a universe. At that time, he could hardly believe that, in the midst of battling others, he could directly call upon a universe into battle. Such dominance was beyond imagination. Absorbing the essence, discarding the dross, Jian Wushuang began to comprehend the mysteries within the space of death. In his origin source sea, waves as mighty as towering mountains surged, caused by the fluctuations of the universal crystal. While gaining insights, he took the opportunity to absorb the universe origin source within the crystal. His devouring force was extremely violent, ceaselessly engulfing the power of the universe origin source from the crystal. When the Tao reached its peak, he perfected his thought power in the starry sky, reaching the third pinnacle. Upon leaving, he condensed his one-thought universe, broke through the fourth layer, and mastered the power of devour. Following that, he condensed the power of all things. Among the three abilities bestowed by the extreme Tao, thought power was quite ordinary. It was possessed by everyone, and he was just a bit stronger than others. The power of devour, on the other hand, was somewhat special. Even Qixin had once mastered this ability. Jian Wushuang didn't know much about this, but it was evident that the power of devour was a more peculiar existence than thought power. Then there was the power of all things. In reality, those who mastered this ability were usually powerful practitioners of the myriad Tao or the transformation Tao. However, the order of mastery was different for him. He could grasp the power of all things at the Tao Lord level, while practitioners of the myriad Tao path and the transformation Tao needed to reach the supreme peak before condensing a trace of the power of all things. To master it, one probably had to wait for the transformation of space, becoming a cosmic space before being able to grasp the power of all things. Upon careful analysis, his three abilities were actually attainable by others. However, consolidating them together was a challenging feat. Jian Wushuang's path to the Tao merge required the preliminary mastery of thought power, devour, and all things before reaching perfection, and then proceeding to integrate the Tao. This proved to be the most challenging step. Unity of the myriad Tao resulted in the fusion of the power of all things. When these three elements overlapped, what kind of power would they form? Jian Wushuang did not know, but he was approaching that step quickly. The 9th level of the extreme Tao was breached. With the assistance of a substantial amount of universe crystals and a thorough comprehension of the complete universe origin source, Jian Wushuang finally reached the 9th level of the extreme Tao. The sea of origin source was pure, with no floating debris in the vast expanse of seawater, not even hidden reefs. Now, Jian Wushuang's extreme Tao origin source reached the purest state. The only thing left was the final step of merging the three elements. Unfortunately, the universe crystals were depleted, and even the universe godstones were entirely used up. So many treasures were all invested in the extreme Tao. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but feel a bit reluctant. If he brought these treasures out, he could increase his divine body's power by 50,000-fold. Additionally, he could easily afford a set of eternal treasures. The improvement in combat power after reaching the 9th level of the Extreme Dao was not as significant as obtaining some treasures for a quicker enhancement. However, these were all external items, and Jian Wushuang could still distinguish them. After breaking through the Extreme Dao, there was still some time. Jian Wushuang began to study the steps of merging the three elements. First was thought power, which evolved from the power of the mind. The power of devour was borrowed from the realm of black holes. In this way, he returned to the initial difficulty. The realm of black holes. Jian Wushuang furrowed his brow. His heart power had long reached the 5th level, and his thought power could be freely manipulated. He was only a hair's breadth away from achieving a perfect mental state. To reach a perfect mental state, he needed to elevate his heart power to the level of the 6th stage, which was the stage of the unity of heaven and earth. He was still a bit short of that, but breaking through the intricacies of heart power cultivation required reaching the peak, a feat usually accomplished by formidable individuals who reached the supreme peak level. Some emperors with extraordinary talents could achieve it, and Shang, when he was a Tier 5 emperor, elevated his mental power to the point of unity with heaven and earth. For Jian Wushuang to advance to the cultivation realm of Tao Lord, it was even more troublesome than breaking through the black hole realm. Between the two, only the possibility of theoretical breakthroughs existed. At least there was a theoretical basis. After reaching the 9th level of the Extreme Dao, he discovered that the power of all things had already undergone a transformation. To dilute and integrate this transformation, he had to collect the essence of all things to stop this change. In theory, this was a good thing, as there would be improvement after the transformation. However, he had not yet integrated with the Tao, and premature transformation would make it impossible for him to Tao merge. The essence of all things was actually a kind of treasure related to the Wood Tao origin source, found only in the Forest of Eternal Secrets in the 4 Great Secret Realms. Moreover, it was legendary, making it quite troublesome. The essence of all things that could transform into spiritual awareness was even more challenging to find. In the future, he had to seek Xinling. Otherwise, he would be unable to integrate the Tao. One problem was followed by another, and Jian Wushuang never expected it to be so troublesome before facing the Tao merge. The more extraordinary, the more difficult it became. The ancient elders did not deceive him. To meet Xinling, he had to go to Grave God Mountain, and to go there, he needed the strength of a Tier 6 emperor. Without merging with the Tao, his strength was simply not enough to reach Grave God Mountain. Although his divine body could rival Tier 6 emperors, but there were plenty of experts of such strength in God's tomb. So, the results were disappointing. Each one perished violently, leaving no complete corpses behind. Jian Wushuang found himself somewhat indifferent to cultivation, caught in a dilemma. He needed to seek a breakthrough. The only way to break through was to completely refine that temporal treasure. A chessboard emerged from the origin source C. Countless powerful origin sources were the pieces above. In the middle, there was also a temporal origin source. Several of Jian Wushuang's avatars were among them. After breaking through the Extreme Dao, he could once again imitate the pieces transformed from origin sources. Suddenly, a bold idea occurred to him, trying to move one of the pieces. The weakest piece on the left side of the chessboard also had the aura of the universe origin source, but it was somewhat incomplete. It was a piece mainly cultivating the flame origin source. When Jian Wushuang manipulated it, a giant fire crow flapped its wings, cooperatively attempting to soar out of the chessboard. However, a powerful force of gravity descended, directly suppressing the fire crow. It was impossible, unless he completely refined this temporal treasure. Having a treasure comparable to the Qixin Temple but unable to use it, only treating it as an auxiliary treasure made Jian Wushuang feel quite frustrated. Splash! The chessboard sank into the sea again, and Jian Wushuang gave up. He could only take it step by step. First, he would enhance what he could. He had not yet broken through for his ultimate Sword Dao. The Sword Dao emphasized killing, and maybe there would be unexpected gains after reaching the 9th level. 10 days passed, and the three were still immersed. not letting a single moment slip by. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Before the three could stop on their own, they were directly teleported out of the treasure hall. After their departure, Lord Yunzhong arrived here holding a black soul lamp. TSK, even the lamps are dismantled and looted. These little guys are really poor. Yunzhong was quite speechless. If he knew that Wanyan and Dongshin hadn't even spared Dragon God's urine, he would probably be even more surprised. The soul lamp extinguished, and the Dark King appeared. Only this time, the Dark King's appearance was solely to loot his treasures. A complete treasure trove of a universe master. Initially, when Jian Wushuang and his companions obtained the legacy of the three kings in the Western Sea, they didn't acquire many treasures. Only a small fraction of people obtained significant treasures. Moreover, the treasures given to them were scarce, all of which were at the level of Emperor treasures, and there wasn't a single universe master-level treasure in sight. Energy treasures like the universe crystal, which only universe masters could use, were also nowhere to be found. The Dark King's legacy, however, was intact, with the entire value of his possessions laid out. Lord Yunzhong's eyes sparkled as he entered the depths of the treasure hall. As for Jian Wushuang and the others, they were no longer under his jurisdiction. Because the third bridge was guarded by the divine General Mayin. Buzz! An unstoppable force erupted. A burst of blood danced in the air, and three figures walked out from it. Huff! 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 The three gasped for breath. They had just traversed an ancient time and space route, fighting all the way to reach this point. Damn it! My eternal treasure was torn apart by that guy. Dongshin felt some heartache as he touched his battle armor. It was the eternal treasure armor he obtained in the River of Time, extremely rare and now torn apart. The ability to tear apart eternal treasures indicated the strength of their opponents. Among the emperors, there were very few who could do such a thing. Not even the Supreme Peak was guaranteed to achieve it. Wanyan furrowed his brow and said, "It's good enough to be alive at this point, and you're still worried about an eternal treasure. In the four great secret realms, there were quite a few eternal treasures. As long as they ventured outside, it wouldn't take long to acquire new ones." Jian Wushuang's aura was very weak, but from the moment he emerged from the blood dance, his strength rapidly recovered. He had a tough time too. If it weren't for the formidable divine body, he probably wouldn't have made it out. Fortunately, with the breakthrough in the extreme Tao and the support of the One Thought universe, he managed to preserve his life. He didn't possess the combat power comparable to Dongshin and Wanyan's Tier 6, though. The two of them practiced a secret technique of great cultivation. Although it wasn't their creation, it was a cosmic-level secret technique. Having cultivated to the great cultivation realm, their strength was comparable to a Tier 6 emperor. In the four great secret realms, they could even rival a peak-level Tier 6 emperor. As for Dongshin, having mastered the realm of black holes, this battle directly propelled him to break through the Tier 6 emperor. Surviving a great calamity will surely bring great fortune, Jian Wushuang consoled. Emerging from the blood mist, they found themselves facing a narrow bridge, only a 3-inch wide single plank. This was the third bridge in this place. A voice echoed from the end of the bridge, a voice they were familiar with, the demon sound Divine General. "I'll give you a chance to choose. 1. Cross the single plank bridge, and after passing, I'll send you to the original realm to receive the complete inheritance of a universe master. 2. Give up on crossing the single plank bridge, and I'll take this person as my disciple." As soon as the words fell, the expressions of the three individuals changed. Taking disciples was not against the rules set by Zhenling. Many inheritors sought to become disciples in the Elder Palace, which was not restricted. As for the inheritance of the Universe Master, it was rare even on Grave God Mountain. Even those who were considered outstanding had only a few who obtained the inheritance of the Universe Master. They were well aware of this. Compared to becoming a disciple of Divine General Mayin, the inheritance of the Universe Master was more enticing. Of course, if one could have both, that would be even better. Oh, I forgot to remind you, under the bridge is connected to the second prison. If anyone falls, I will personally go to rescue them. However, whether I make it in time or not, I can't guarantee. With these words, Jian Wushuang was stunned. The path to the second prison? That place was a true purgatory. Even the Supreme Peak experts couldn't guarantee their safety in that place. It was a place where even peak figures like Shan Jun could possibly fall. If they were to fall down there, it was doubtful that anyone would come to their rescue in time, and they might meet their demise. Dongxin and Wan Yan were not very familiar with the second prison. So Jian Wushuang recounted the information he had learned from Wuxia. The two had somber expressions, and hesitation filled their hearts. Cultivators traversed a perilous path, dancing on the edge of a blade with each step, each move a gamble. But they also calculated their gains and losses. The inheritance of the Universe Master was undoubtedly important, but compared to one's own life, it seemed somewhat less worthwhile. Jian Wushuang quickly made up his mind. Whoever wanted to go, let them go. He certainly wouldn't. Taking Divine General Mayin as his master would be good. Currently, he was lacking such a powerful backing. Divine General Mayin was not under the jurisdiction of the Elder Palace. He was a core member of Qishan Temple, even surpassing the Elder Palace and the four great temples in influence. Although the glory of the past was no longer there, with the strength of the Supreme Peak and being the ultimate emperor, at least he could guide Jian Wushuang a bit. Taoist friend Wushuang, do you know what kind of beings are imprisoned in the second prison? Wan Yan was still a bit unwilling to give up. Dongxin had broken through to Tier 6 and had the ability to go to the Grave God Mountain. He could choose not to take risks, but he was still a distance away from Tier 6. In the river of time and space, he had already completed the cosmic secret techniques he had obtained, and now he lacked a legacy that could help him. He didn't want to give up this excellent opportunity. Jian Wushuang shook his head. He only knew that the second prison was very dangerous, capable of causing the fall of Supreme Peak experts. As for the beings imprisoned, he truly had no idea. Standing beside them, Dongxin patted Wan Yan on the shoulder and comforted him. A true man is born between heaven and earth, able to advance and retreat. Don't be reckless for a momentary danger. Humph! Wan Yan snorted coldly, retorting, You've already broken through to Tier 6, so you're not in a hurry, but my realm is still far behind, and the Tao of the Shadow is the most difficult. Without that cosmic inheritance, I don't know when I'll be able to cultivate to what level. Dongxin, seeing this, withdrew his hand, unsure of what to say. That is true. The Tao is cruel. If you don't compete, you'll be left behind, surpassed by future generations, surpassed by peers. They were all anxious, especially within the Qishan Temple. If they didn't progress quickly, once the gap widened, it would be challenging to catch up. One step, fast steps, step by step. At least the two of them were faster than Tier 5 emperors of other original universes. Have you made up your mind? The face of the demon sound Divine General appeared in the sky. Wan Yan did not give up and asked, Senior, if I fall into the second prison, how long would it take for you to rescue me? 1 incense sticks time, Divine General Mayin said indifferently. He sent Wuxia to establish a passage inside the prison. Although this place was connected to the second prison, it was a one-way passage. You could only enter, not exit. If someone fell inside, even if Divine General Mayin entered at the first moment, it would take time to search because of random teleportation. This was still considered fast, because Wuxia was inside to assist. Otherwise, it would take at least an hour. 1 incense sticks time. Wan Yan gritted his teeth and thought in his heart, Let's gamble! With his myriad shadows technique, he could hold on for 10 breaths in front of a Supreme Peak expert. If he burned his origin source desperately, he could withstand 20 breaths. As long as his luck wasn't that bad and he didn't encounter a Supreme Peak expert right after entering, he could endure. This was a life-or-death gamble. If he encountered a large group of Supreme Peak existences as soon as he entered, then he could only say he was unlucky. I'll choose to walk the tightrope, Wan Yan said firmly. Jian Wushuang and Dongxin exchanged a glance, their expressions devoid of much surprise. Just as Wan Yan had mentioned, he was unwilling to be left behind. When Dongxin initially entered, he diligently cultivated, mastering the secret techniques to the great achievement and subsequently advancing further. Now that Dongshin had ascended to Tier 6 of Emperor, Wan Yen was even more unwilling to stagnate. Without much hesitation, Jian Wushuang was not particularly eager for the Universe Master's inheritance. He had a significant chance of obtaining it at the Grave God Mountain, especially with the Skysite Heavenly Chessboard in his possession, where the origin source of the Universe Master abounded, along with the legacy of the first true king. Within the Skysite Heavenly Chessboard, there was a set of chess pieces with hierarchical titles left by the first true king as an inheritance. These pieces were categorized as pawn, rook, general, and deity. Currently, Jian Wushuang could only imitate a portion of the pawn-rank chess pieces. Only when he could imitate the general-rank chess pieces could he unlock the inheritance of the first true king. However, when he heard the spiritual consciousness of the first true king back then, although this inheritance was complete, the created secret techniques and some cultivation experiences were not suitable for him. Saying so, who could guarantee that his power of all things wasn't picky? He never thought that the universal inheritance he obtained in the primitive realm would be related to the Sword Dao. Hence, he made the decision to give it up without hesitation. I'm going too. Jian Wushuang was startled. He never expected Dongshin to tread the same precarious path. Haha, since we're here, not taking a stroll would surely be a lifelong regret. Wan Yen, I'll accompany you. Dongshin grinned. At this moment, he truly wished to be born as a mighty being in the vast expanse of the heavens and earth. Wan Yen's expression changed. Then he chuckled. What's the matter? Are you afraid that I'll surpass you in inheriting the Universe Master's legacy? Don't even say that. I did worry about that. This statement was clearly a jest, a way to lighten the mood as they faced imminent death. Jian Wushuang smiled. Then let me congratulate you two in advance. May you succeed and inherit the legacy of the Universe Master. These two individuals were truly prepared to go all out. Wan Yen possessed the myriad shadows, and Dongshin was a Tier 6 emperor. With some means at their disposal, they probably had a chance to survive under the pressure of a supreme peak opponent. However, Jian Wushuang had none of these advantages. Even with the most powerful means, merely surviving under a Tier 6 emperor was considered good, not to mention facing the formidable supreme peak experts. Wushuang, aren't you going? Dongshin asked in surprise. Wan Yen, however, laughed and scolded. Jian Wushuang follows the ultimate Dao. Can you compare to him? Oh, one almost forgot. Wushuang doesn't need to go all out. Suddenly, Dongshin remembered that Jian Wushuang had embarked on the ultimate Dao. He would undoubtedly become much stronger than them in the future, with greater potential, and Qishan Temple would focus on nurturing him. There was no need for him to go all out. Seeing these two individuals going all out, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but feel a bit itchy to join the fray and inadvertently revealed the truth. To be honest, I'm still just a Dao Lord. If I were an emperor, I wouldn't give up this time. It's just that the gap in strength is too significant, and I don't have confidence. Jian Wushuang spoke with a hint of desolation. Upon hearing that Jian Wushuang was only a Dao Lord, Dongshin and Wan Yen were astonished. You're a Dao Lord? How is that possible? In the blood dance, you weren't much weaker than the two of us. Can a Dao Lord compare to a Tier 6 emperor? Wan Yen was particularly surprised. Although they were aware that the ultimate emperor was very powerful, much stronger than those of the same level, they were confident. However, among peers, they had long accepted the fact that the ultimate emperor was the strongest. But Jian Wushuang was beyond belief. A Dao Lord comparable to a Tier 6 emperor. How many levels had he surpassed? Dongshin sighed on the side and said, Can't compare. Can't compare. Back then, even Shang wasn't as outrageous as you. I thought you were a Tier 4 emperor. A Tier 4 emperor who could match a Tier 6 emperor was already incredible. Who would have thought that Jian Wushuang was a Dao Lord? Although Divine General Mayin had long known that Jian Wushuang was a Dao Lord, his eyes couldn't help but squint. A Dao Lord comparable to a Tier 6 emperor, he didn't seem this powerful before. Back in their time, the most dazzling emperor was Emperor Jueyun, and the Dao Lords received little attention. Even Emperor Jueyun wasn't as powerful back then. How did Jian Wushuang achieve this? The demon sound divine general was also puzzled. Zhenling was puzzled as well, only knowing that there was a huge eye in the starry sky watching Jian Wushuang. But Zhenling couldn't see too much. Senior Mayin, I choose to leave, Jian Wushuang said calmly. The words just now also served as encouragement for Dongshin and Wan Yen. In fact, there was nothing to say. If he were an emperor, he would have gone up to the bridge. As long as he broke through, he would be at least a Tier 5 emperor. If he could enter the realm of the black hole, the breakthrough would make him a Tier 6 emperor. After ascending to Tier 6, his strength was likely on par with Supreme Peak experts. Falling down into the second prison posed no danger unless he found himself surrounded by a group of Supreme Peak adversaries. However, having the one-thought universe, especially after becoming an emperor, made him even more formidable. Even if faced with a group of Supreme Peak beings, he could escape defeat. The visage of Divine General Mayin appeared, and his voice resounded with authority. Jian Wushuang, your request is something I cannot fulfill. You have only one option. You must tread the narrow path. What? Jian Wushuang was on the verge of cursing. What did this mean? Discrimination against the ultimate Tao. They wanted him, a Tao Lord, to walk a narrow path. What if he fell? How could he handle it? Encountering Supreme Peak beings, let alone lasting for an incense stick's time, he wouldn't be able to withstand even a single breath. When he encountered Dragon God before, it was because the opponent wasn't in a hurry to strike, wanting to know why they had entered the Dark King's Tao arena. If he entered the second prison, those ancient and wicked entities, upon seeing him, a Tao Lord would probably meet a miserable fate, either being devoured alive or having his divine body blown away in a breath, annihilating his origin source. This is the will of Lord Jinling. If you have any objections, you can take it up with Lord Jinling. Divine General Mayin was somewhat surprised, as Lord Jinling had just informed him. However, if you pass the narrow path, the treasures you obtain will be different from theirs. I know you possess the path of devour. Lord Jinling will bestow a universe origin source for you to devour, aiding you in reaching the realm of black hole, Divine General Mayin explained. These words were just relayed to Jian Wushuang by Jinling, telling him without missing a single detail. However, Jian Wushuang couldn't find joy in any of it. No matter how he approached the first two bridges, he fell off them. The first time was a voluntary descent, the second time a forced one. For this third bridge, he had no confidence whatsoever. But Jinling's command was the law of the Qixin Temple, a decree no one could defy. Upon hearing this, the four temple masters reluctantly acknowledged it, holding their noses. As a Tao Lord, where could he argue against it? At this moment, Dongshin and Wan Yen took on the roles of the good guys, advising him one after another. Saving it wasn't a big deal, but that was the origin source of the universe. Devour. Only then did they recall the two words spoken by the Divine General Mayin. Devour? Does it have something to do with the great demon lord suppressed in the original universe? Dongshin couldn't help but ask. The face of Divine General Mayin twitched slightly. He had just recovered, and he was not yet familiar with the situation of that true master. The original universe. Divine General Mayin reminisced. There was no impression of this universe in his memory, but the person mentioned should be the same. The Great Demon Lord was just a name for the original universe, one of the three true masters, suppressed in the original universe. Well, are you ready? You can come up any time. I'll be waiting for you on the other side. Divine General Mayin didn't answer, but there was a hint of sadness in his heart. Speaking of the true master, it was similar to the Qixin back then. That was a piece of flesh from the Qixin. The Qixin abandoned his proudest and strongest Tao. Otherwise, the final battle wouldn't have ended in defeat, and the Qixin Temple wouldn't have fallen to such a desperate state. After the departure of Divine General Mayin, only 3 of them remained. Tao friend Wushuang, don't be disheartened. The 2 of us will hold the front for you, Dongshin said, then took the lead on the narrow bridge. Wan Yen smiled at him and followed suit. Now only Jian Wushuang remained sitting in place. He pondered on how to proceed. Ahead was a chaotic expanse, and nothing was visible. He didn't know how long this narrow bridge was, but regardless of its length, there was a 99% chance that he would fall. The figures of Dongxin and Wan Yan quickly disappeared. Jian Wushuang, left alone, felt even more isolated. This is simply setting me up. Jian Wushuang inwardly cursed Jinling. Wasn't Jinling's attitude towards him different back then? He even gave him the Qixin's personal jade tablet. How could things turn out like this now? Upon further thought, if Jinling wasn't holding a grudge, he wouldn't joke with his life like this. In the outside world, Jinling might not have had so much influence. However, within the Qixin temple, would Jinling just watch him walk to his death? Moreover, this place was the inheritance ground of the Qixin temple. That was an optimistic point of view. If one were to think pessimistically, back when he betrayed the Qixin temple, became a lackey of Xinling, and did all sorts of evil deeds to help by Zhenwen's rebirth, causing bloodshed among the people. In the end, he even assisted Xinling in resurrecting Fuego, causing a great disturbance in the 4 great secret realms. Xinling had no choice but to revive some divine generals to guard important areas. He had to shoulder this blame. Although initially Jian Wushuang did it to survive, no matter what, betrayal was betrayal, and he had to acknowledge it. I hope things develop in a positive direction, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself, then stepped onto the suspension bridge. However, things often tended to develop towards the worst. That Fuego could still be resurrected was something Jinling had never expected. The other party came from the stars, with a profound background and unpredictable strength. Now, appearing in the 4 great secret realms, the Qixin Temple's stronghold, Jinling was currently busy searching for Fuego. Fortunately, Fuego was still under his control. When Fuego attacked the 3 Kings' court initially, it was to save Frelesa. Now that he was revived, he would also go in search. The best course of action now was negotiation. They couldn't wait until Fuego's strength recovered to the level of the Universe Master and penetrate the Qixin Temple's defenses. By then, there would be no room for negotiation. Recovering to that level in the 4 great secret realms was incredibly difficult. It's also possible that Fuego hasn't recovered, and among the inheritors of the Qixin Temple, a super-existence has emerged. At least for now, Shang's future looked promising, with the best chance of breaking through to become the Universe Master in a short period. But everything was uncertain. Jinling preferred a more cautious approach, considering the safety of the Qixin Temple. This time he made Jian Wushuang walk the precarious path, but it was not just a punishment. There was also a tilt in resources. Now that the Grave God Mountain has opened many treasure troves, resources kept on being spent. The purpose was to quickly cultivate these inheritors to stabilize the 4 great secret realms. It was also a preparation for dealing with Xinling's plans and Fuego in the future. If things came down to it, one could only personally go down and engage in a Xinling inherited the will of Qixin, and he was not weak. Although he could only take action within the Qixin Temple, it was sufficient. This time, he would produce a universe origin source. If Jian Wushuang really walks across this precarious bridge, everything will be resolved. All the previous challenges would be effortlessly overcome. With a universe origin in hand, what else could possibly stand in the way? Reaching the realm of the black hole was inevitable, and then breaking through to the ultimate sword Dao could also be achieved smoothly. However, Jinling did not know that Jian Wushuang was facing more than just these issues. Breaking through in heart power was a significant obstacle. He could not break through in his heart power cultivation like this. The merging of thought power, devour power, and the power of all things was no less challenging than the Dao merge. These concerns were unknown to Jinling. Only Jian Wushuang knew the difficulty of the path ahead. It was much harder than the precarious bridge he currently traversed. Upon stepping onto the narrow bridge, Jian Wushuang's consciousness was immediately detached. That sensation constantly affected his mental state, resulting in his mental state shattering time and time again, only to solidify afterward. Being able to influence my mental state, this bridge is even more impactful than the mundane mortal world from the previous time, Jian Wushuang exclaimed, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he treaded carefully with each step. Mind you, the mundane mortal world was beneath the bridge. This was on the bridge itself. If it tormented people like this on the bridge, then what if one were to fall off? Jian Wushuang dared not even imagine. Fall off and one would be lost. However, there was a silver lining. He was somewhat pleased. This bridge served as a refinement for his mental state. If he could break through, along with it, his heart power would also break through. That would be a double stroke of luck. He could now touch the threshold of the 6th level of heart power. However, this narrow bridge was even more difficult to traverse than he had imagined. At this moment, he relied entirely on his willpower to move forward. L must obtain the complete origin source of the universe. Jian Wushuang's determination was unwavering. At this moment, no one could shake his conviction. Such was the charm of mental states. It was also the deficiency that many deceased emperors had. In ancient times, emperors would fall, their mental consciousness collapsing, self-destructing in the absence of a strong mental state. In the pursuit of true freedom in the world, Jian Wushuang learned that one must refrain from coveting the beauty of this world. No matter what, everything is relative. By letting go of everything, one gains everything. This is the fulfillment of the heart state. Though he understood the principles, how could Jian Wushuang bring himself to let go? If he were to abandon the universe origin source and relinquish his life now, he would have likely fallen long ago. Hence, it was said that the state of one's heart is the most tormenting. Step by step, countless steps. What frustrated Jian Wushuang the most was that he didn't know where the end was. He could only continue walking blindly. He couldn't sense an end. Or perhaps it was the end of time. Maybe it was just a moment, but he felt as if he had experienced an entire era. Jian Wushuang had felt this way before, back in the starry sky. Although he couldn't perceive the constraints of time, he witnessed the prosperity of a planet. Phew! After an unknown amount of time passed, Jian Wushuang began to experience hallucinations. He saw Dongxin and Wan Yan waving excitedly ahead, gesturing for him to persevere. Even the indifferent and silent divine General Mayin nodded at him. In a trance, the beautiful scene flashed by again. The scene ahead transformed into Dongxin's falling figure. Wan Yan trembled, barely holding on, and Dongxin plunged into the bottomless abyss. Divine General Mayin also leaped down. It was a scene of great tragedy. Jian Wushuang shook his head, suddenly awakening. "No, it's all fake!" he roared in anger, trying to rouse himself. At this moment, a voice interrupted him. "Master, have you entered the illusion again?" An old voice rang out. The scene began to solidify and change. It was on that star in the night sky. The old man was his disciple. What is this? Jian Wushuang was stunned. How did he end up back here? Could everything be an illusion? Jian Wushuang dared not believe it, and directly attacked, fearing the person before him. In the old man's eyes, there was doubt, there was fear, and then there was understanding. It's all fake. Jian Wushuang's thought power moved, but he found that his thought power had weakened, and his strength had also diminished. He was clearly about to reach the completion stage level of Tao Lord, so why did he become a Yen Immortal again? Everything before him became even more real. Breaking out of the wooden house, he saw the human race. He saw that burly man carrying a stone axe, like a wild man. He was leading the expansion of the human territory, and the strong who died under his axe were endless. Then the scene changed again. Jian Wushuang sneered. Indeed, it's all fake. But this time what he saw was the Qixin Temple. Or rather, the Qixin Temple that had not been built. A majestic figure sat on the throne, preaching to all living beings. Behind him were a group of emperors transporting some domains, investing them into the 4 great secret realms. Jian Wushuang looked down upon the majestic figure, desperately trying to see, but still couldn't see clearly, only able to see the jade tablet on the person's prominent thumb. Qixin, Jian Wushuang exclaimed. His voice made some listening emperors or universe masters dissatisfied, and they turned their heads to glare at him. Jian Wushuang swallowed hard, frightened into immobility. Then the scene changed again. It was still the Qixin Temple. But this time, the Qixin Temple gave him a very desolate feeling. The lonely figure sat on the throne, and there was no one in the Dao arena. The scene expanded. Jian Wushuang not only saw Qixin, but also saw the entire Moro-temporal space filled with an evil aura, the power of Devour. These evil auras enveloped the Qixin temple. Apart from the Qixin temple, the entire Moro-temporal space was occupied by these evil auras. Qixin raised his head as if he had discovered Jian Wushuang, weakly saying, "Back then, why did you—" Before he could finish his sentence, time stopped, and it backtracked. As if there was a force preventing something, Jian Wushuang could never clearly see Qixin's face. But Jian Wushuang didn't think much about it himself. He felt that everything was fake, and didn't care at all. Who knew if Qixin was speaking to someone else? Now, all he wanted was to break through the illusion in front of him. Otherwise, he would sink deeper and deeper. With a burst of firm determination, Jian Wushuang pulled himself out of the scene. Jian Wushuang's eyes were somewhat dazed. He had witnessed too many scenes. There were ancient Qixin, everything in the starry sky. Various scenes, though only fragments of words, had a certain connection. It was a connection through time. In his current state, there was no breakthroughs and there was no place in time. He couldn't comprehend much. He decided to treat these scenes as the environment and ignore them. His gaze was fixed on the wooden bridge ahead. He moved forward again. The complete universe origin source was waving towards him. He couldn't fall. If he fell, it would be over. Not only would he gain nothing, but he might also lose his life. The three of them walked on the wooden bridge, facing the threat of death. A sudden thought crossed Jian Wushuang's mind. Coming out of the Dark King's Dao arena just now had made them face the fear of death. There must be a connection. It was related to the Dark King. The Dark King represented death. Now walking on the wooden bridge, Jian Wushuang dared not think too much. Once his state of mind wavered, he could fall at any moment. Without those dragging scenes, he could finally move forward steadily. After an unknown period, a figure appeared in front, standing on the bridge without moving. The figure was familiar, but it was not Dongshin or Wan Yen. Who is it? Jian Wushuang's eyes focused. The figure, seemingly familiar, had been seen many times by Jian Wushuang. Behind that figure, Jian Wushuang stopped. He dared not step forward anymore because the figure remained motionless, and he didn't know what to do. When he was at a loss, the figure turned around slowly and smiled. "It's me, Jian Wushuang." That smile was too familiar to Jian Wushuang. "Teacher Xianxia." Jian Wushuang's state of mind instantly shattered. All the scenes disappeared in an instant, and many doubts surfaced in his mind. But Xianxia's figure had already started to retreat. He wanted to reach out to stop him, but his center of gravity was unstable, and he fell directly off the wooden bridge. It was only then that Jian Wushuang realized it was an illusion. He fell for it. In the fleeting moment of falling from the narrow bridge, Jian Wushuang snapped back to reality. He extended his hands forward, attempting to grasp onto something, but his efforts were in vain. As he continued to plummet, the bridge above became clearer, and the oppressive aura thinned the farther he fell. On the bridge, Dongshin led the way, nearing the other side, while Wan Yen persisted in his journey. Only he descended into the abyss. Within the depths, Jian Wushuang beheld a familiar scene. It was a black hole. He traversed through the black hole, convinced that this was the entrance connecting to the second prison. Now, all he could do was pray that Divine General Mayin would swiftly pull him out. Within the black hole, Jian Wushuang finally regained control of his form, appearing less disheveled but feeling somewhat desolate. The dangers ahead were unknown to him, but he knew that even Supreme Peak experts might perish. Suddenly, a figure approached him head-on, and Jian Wushuang was momentarily stunned. Divine General Mayin had mentioned that this passage was unidirectional, so how could someone reverse the direction and head towards the bridge? The figure drew closer, and Jian Wushuang's heart leaped to his throat. Not because he feared the person before him. Rather, he realized that the figure seemed to be himself, or more precisely, his own clone. It was the clone he had separated from himself in the Mo Luo nation. Since entering the black hole, that clone had been unable to emerge, only able to comprehend the mysteries of the black hole. It had rarely been of assistance to him, so he had neglected it. After all, it was just an avatar clone with no impact on him. Unexpectedly, here he was encountering his own clone. Aside from shock, Jian Wushuang also felt ecstatic. The joy came from the possibility of swapping places with his clone, sending it to the second prison while he could return to the bridge. However, the exchange of thought power meant leaving behind substantial treasures in the second prison. Except for the temporal treasure, the Sky-Sight heavenly chessboard. His beast god weapon would also be abandoned. Jian Wushuang was conflicted. On one hand, there was a gamble with his life, and on the other hand, he had to relinquish some treasures. Can't afford to gamble. Jian Wushuang shook his head. He truly couldn't risk it. If he perished, he would lose everything. Zhenling could resurrect the strong in the Qixin temple, but he couldn't revive a powerhouse from the original universe. If he were to fall, his soul fragments would return to the original universe. Zhenling couldn't retrieve his soul fragments from the original universe. Without those fragments, reversing time and space was impossible. Externally, it was a space-time of the original universe. Even beings of immense strength, like the universe masters, couldn't retrieve fragments unless they controlled the original universe. Among the people in this timeline's river of time, none had the ability to do so. It was futile to even think about it. Therefore, he dared not gamble. He had yet to acquire new components for the beast god weapon, and its current assistance to him was minimal. His divine body had approached 50,000-fold of its original power, and the maximum boost from the beast god weapon was now only 50,000-fold. Apart from body protection, it was no longer of much help. But the precious thing was that it could keep improving. Moreover, the beast god weapon had accompanied him, helping him overcome numerous difficulties. At the moment, it was a dilemma. If his true self fell, he would face death. Swapping his true self with the clone, there was a high probability of losing treasures when his clone descended. He had no choice but to make a decision now. Farewell. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes, and a powerful thought power erupted, instantly surging out from within him and entering into that clone. Jian Wushuang transformed his clone into the main body on the solitary bridge. And Jian Wushuang, who was carrying a multitude of treasures, transformed back into the clone and dashed toward the direction of the second prison. After the switch, Jian Wushuang was actually worried that something might go wrong. But fortunately, nothing did. Now he was returning in the direction he came from, which delighted him. Although it was regrettable to lose the beast god weapon army, the value of a complete universe origin source far surpassed that of the beast god weapon. Initially, when the 9 beast god weapons emerged, they were bestowed by the Qixin to their subordinates. The 3 divine lords each had one, as did some personally chosen disciples, and one went to a universe master who had accomplished great deeds. The beast god weapon Candle Dragon ended up in the hands of that universe master. Although he was not a core under Qixin, he obtained the beast god weapon, adding a touch of legend to his existence in the moro-temporal space. When the beast god weapon appeared, it could surpass even the universe treasures, although it couldn't reach the level of temporal treasures. Within the moro-temporal space, it was already the pinnacle treasure. The 3 kings of the 3 kings' court, if it weren't for the first true king luckily obtaining the Sky-Sight heavenly chessboard gifted to him by Xianxia, wouldn't have possessed a treasure comparable to the beast god weapon. During that time in the moro-temporal space, they were among the top forces. They were all envious of the beast god weapons. Now Jian Wushuang had voluntarily abandoned it. He had once searched for information about the beast god weapons. Some of its components were left behind in the 4 great secret realms, but he didn't have the time to search for them one by one. Once he successfully integrated the Tao, he would have the ability to restore the beast god weapons when he had the time. Even if the beast god weapon wasn't complete, restoring half of its power would make it stronger than ordinary universe treasures. It would be enough for him to roam the Emperor realm. What a pity! Jian Wushuang turned around and sighed as he looked back. If it weren't a matter of life and death, he wouldn't have done this. His clone plunged into the bottomless abyss and emerged from a black hole. There, in the true purgatory, Jian Wushuang's clone had just entered when a brown flame appeared before him. It directly annihilated his body, leaving no trace. The flame was emitted by a giant lava beast, millions of miles in size. Its body had numerous molten caves, from which flames occasionally erupted. The lava beast sensed a familiar aura. What is this? Feathers, scales, arms, and an eye. It was precisely the components of the beast god weapon left behind by Jian Wushuang, separated instantly by the flame. Candle dragon! Exclaimed the lava beast. In its huge eyes, there was endless rage. It slowly stood up, and a pair of enormous wings unfolded, remarkably similar to Candle Dragon's wings. The 7th generation descendant, Man Qian, pays respects to the ancestor. It was something left behind by its ancestors. In the beginning, the 1st generation beast god, Candle Dragon, was killed and refined into the beast god weapon by the Qixin Temple. However, some innate divine beasts left behind descendants, and they regarded Candle Dragon as their ancestor. Candle Dragon was on par with powerhouses like the Three Kings, naturally having followers. Buzz! A violent figure appeared instantly. However, this figure was not Divine General Mayin but Shan Jun and Wuxia. Old Man Qian, who are you making offerings for? Wuxia sneered. Seeing it was Wuxia, Man Qian roared angrily, Wuxia! Before Man Qian could erupt, Shan Jun transformed into his true form. It was an evil shadowy giant beast with only one eye, and its sharp cry sent shivers down one's spine. Man Qian, these things, one am afraid, can't be left to you. Shan Jun sneered. Since he arrived here, being a part of Qixin in the past, the suppressed ancient beasts and some special life forms had harbored deep hatred for Qixin. They had been hunting Shan Jun everywhere. Over the years, Shan Jun had been on the run. Now, with Wu's arrival wielding the key to the second prison, those old guys kept their distance. Shan Jun revealed his original ferocious fangs, ready to retaliate against these old guys. He wasn't afraid of retaliation after Wuxia left. These guys never intended to let him go in the first place. Shan Jun, in his true form, shook the heavens with his formidable strength. Even Wuxia standing on the side was amazed. It was that legendary figure who had captured Shan Jun in the first place. Some divine generals were no match for Shan Jun. His strength was well known. With a burst of violent power accompanied by a black fist shadow, it smashed down, followed by a million fist shadows exploding. The force made the heavens and earth lose their color, and even the sturdy body of the lava giant beast shattered. Weren't you guys looking for me all along? Shan Jun thoroughly smashed the lava giant beast into the underground, and the aura became extremely weak. He raised his head, looking at the ancient beings hiding in the darkness in the distance, disdainfully saying, "What? Are you scared now?" Those ancient beings weren't afraid of Shan Jun but were afraid of the key in Wu's hands. It was a token that could arbitrarily suppress all the powerful beings inside the second prison. The strength of Shan Jun was formidable, but even he couldn't face a multitude alone. A group of timid mice. Back when my master was still around, you lot weren't even worthy of being confined here. The voice of Wuxia was icy. Upon hearing the name Qixin, these ancient beings held their breath. Even after Qixin had fallen for such a long time, they still feared him. Just the mention of his name could send shivers down their spines. Seeing no response, Shan Jun handed the components of the beast god weapon to Wuxia, instructing, "Deliver a message for me to that little guy. Devouring is not wrong. Black holes will emerge in the universe. It's not our fault." Wuxia felt a bit embarrassed upon hearing this, but neither agreed nor refuted. There was nothing wrong with taking these things back to Jian Wushuang. "You should leave now. I'll follow shortly. Without the suppression of the token, dealing with these old folks will be a bit troublesome." Shan Jun nodded, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the spot. Wuxia, after intimidating the others for the duration of an incense stick, manipulated the token and casually tore through the space, leaving the second prison. He needed to rush back to report. Qixin Temple within the Sea of Origin Source. Zhang Ling stared wide-eyed, pacing in a pavilion, muttering to himself, "How did he manage to return above? You all have a responsibility for this matter. It's clearly a one-way passage. How did that guy return above using the same passageway? In a world where even a Tao Lord could advance against the wind, if those old fellows were allowed to escape, I reckon one don't even to bother with you. How useless. Just head to the second prison yourselves and find a spot with good feng shui to bury yourselves. In the pavilion, besides Jinling, there were also Divine General Mayin and Wuxia. The passage was created by Divine General Mayin and Wuxia, so naturally, they were responsible for it. Wuxia had initially planned to use this method to reach the earthly realm and throw all those rebellious Kuei organization members into the second prison, saving them the trouble of going there to slaughter them. Now it seemed the plan wouldn't work. Otherwise, he could have used this achievement to once again challenge for the position of the Palace Lord. Unfortunately, he encountered this stroke of bad luck. However, he also had to thank Jian Wushuang for this. The first one to fall was Jian Wushuang, and Jian Wushuang managed this feat. If he could investigate, it would save him from a fatal mistake. Otherwise, if the passage was opened into the earthly realm, releasing a group of ancient entities, he would be finished. The 4 great secret realms would probably be doomed. He almost made a huge mistake. When that time came, Jinling would probably slaughter him to offer a sacrifice. Also, those benefits you promised to them are all gone now. You guys should come up with them yourselves. Especially that universe origin source. Originally, being scolded a bit was tolerable. After all, Jinling's temper was such that anyone who came would be scolded, and Wuxia was used to it. But when he heard that he had to pay from his own pocket, his expression froze. Jinling, with small eyes, approached Wuxia, lowering his voice. What? Don't agree. No, no. Wuxia hastily waved his hand and then explained, My lord, even if you sold me, I still wouldn't be able to get a universe origin source. The origin source of the Universe Master was similar to the Emperor's. Both were complete origin sources contained within their bodies. It just required a Universe Master to separate their own origin source, and a Universe Master without an origin source would probably immediately enter a deep sleep. After waking up for several epochs, the origin source would self-repair halfway, and then they would have to cultivate for countless epochs to fully restore to their peak. The acquisition of a complete universe origin source is the most challenging task, and no one would attempt it. Obtaining the universe origin source can be achieved through 2 relatively simple methods. Either by destroying an original universe or by slaying a universe master. Either way, Wuxia couldn't manage it. If he were to solely pursue the inheritance of a universe master, he could manage to put together a set of it. By presenting some treasures and speaking favorably to the Vermilion Bird Temple Master, he might be able to obtain it. If that didn't work, he could always spend a considerable sum to purchase one from the Elder Palace. However, when it came to the universe origin source, there was simply no way for him to obtain it. It was truly a difficult situation. Observing the frustrated Wuxia, Jinling shifted his gaze away and calmly said, Since you don't have the means to pay, go and do something for me. Accomplish the acquisition of that universe origin source, and I'll cover the cost. If you fail, then go and mine in the cave. Yes, Wuxia readily agreed. It had come to this point and there was no other option. The Demon Sound Divine General didn't fall for Jinling's tactics. Later on, he could deceive Dongshin and Wan Yen. Even if he had to significantly boost their courage, they wouldn't dare to claim the Universe Master's inheritance. If worst came to worst, he could let them cultivate his own inheritance. As an ultimate emperor, the supreme techniques he created weren't much inferior to those Universe Masters. It would be sufficient. Once his strength grew, he could then seek the universe inheritance on the Grave God Mountain. Mayin, you can step back. I have something to discuss with Wuxia. Jinling waved his hand, indicating the Demon Sound Divine General to leave. Divine General Mayin respectfully saluted and then departed. He had no intention of staying longer in this place. He didn't care to know what Jinling and Wuxia were going to talk about. Now, Jian Wushuang and the others were waiting for him on the other side, like hungry fledglings, anticipating his return to nourish them. However, this time he had somewhat disappointed them. On the Demon Sound Mountain beneath the demon ceiling space, Jian Wushuang, Dongshin, and Wan Yen chatted happily. All 3 of them succeeded, a result they never anticipated. Before crossing the single-log bridge, they had prepared for the possibility of falling into oblivion. Unexpectedly, they all succeeded. Taoist Wushuang, you are truly remarkable. It's understandable that Dongshin could pass, considering he's already become an emperor. But for you, a Dao Lord, to cross successfully, I truly admire you wholeheartedly. Wanyan raised his wine cup, clinked it with Jian Wushuang's, and then took a sip. The trio was so elated that by the time they waited for the arrival of Divine General Main, they had already started drinking at the location. Afterward, they made plans to celebrate for several days and also decided to introduce some Tier 5 emperors from the original universe to Jian Wushuang. After all, they were all powerful beings from the same hometown universe, and naturally they needed to become closer in the future. On the Grave God Mountain now, their universe was no longer the dominant force. More and more powerful beings from different universes were rising, and they had started forming alliances for mutual protection. It was time for them to establish the influence of the original universe, and this matter was urgent. If Zhenling were to find out that the successors he nurtured were already preparing to establish their own forces, one could only wonder what he would think. Upon hearing Wanyan's words, Dongshin laughed and scolded, "Wanyan, you're just jealous of me." The three of them shared a similar smile and then raised their cups again. They exchanged compliments for a while. Taoist Dongshin, when do you plan to go to the Grave God Mountain? Jian Wushuang asked, steering the conversation back to business. Wanyan, seeing this, also became serious. This time, they all successfully crossed the single-log bridge. Although Wanyan did not break through in the realm of the black hole, unexpectedly, he made a breakthrough in heart power, directly reaching the completion stage of heart power. Many Supreme Peak beings hadn't reached this level, but Wanyan had advanced to the forefront. After this outing, even without the inheritance of the Universe Master, Wanyan could rapidly shatter the mirror and strive for the position of a Tier 6 Emperor. Jian Wushuang suffered a rather miserable loss this time. Coming down the narrow bridge, he was left battered and bruised. It could be said that he had thrown in the towel, and now all that remained was for the universe origin source to replenish his vitality. Upon hearing this, Dongshin responded nonchalantly, "I'm not in a hurry now. I'll set out after completing the inheritance. I also plan to make a trip to the Earth realm. I heard it's quite chaotic there. It's a good opportunity to explore a bit. However, I won't stay too long. Afterward, I'll make a round in the human realm and then head to the god's tomb." Jian Wushuang felt a stir in his heart. He hadn't expected the other party to have such a well-thought-out plan, and he couldn't help but feel a bit envious. However, since the other had chosen to venture into the Earth realm midway, there was a chance Jian Wushuang could catch up and they could travel together. When Zhenling had mentioned not seeking external help, it didn't exclude fellow inheritors of the god's tomb who were on the same journey. It wasn't considered asking for help. "You're heading to the earthly realm for exploration? How long do you plan to stay there?" Wanyan asked. His thoughts align with Jian Wushuang's. The more companions they had on the journey, the better. Dongshin hesitated for a moment before saying, "It depends on the situation. It could be as short as 1,000 years or as long as an epoch." "Within an epoch, then?" Wanyan commented, "You can wait for me. I estimate I can break through within 1 billion years, utilizing the lowest time flow rate, which would take a mere 1,000,000 years. During ordinary seclusion, the required flow rate wouldn't be too high. Only in urgent situations would one activate time flow rates of tens of thousands or even millions. An epoch. Jian Wushuang sighed in relief. With the blessing of the universe origin source, even a pig could break through within an epoch. Dongshin and Wanyan looked at Jian Wushuang simultaneously, asking, "Dao friend Wushuang, are you planning to break through the Emperor before heading to the god's tomb?" "Yes, otherwise, with my current strength, I might lag behind." Jian Wushuang replied without any need for courtesy, stating the truth. If he didn't integrate with the Dao with his current strength, even if the other party kindly offered to take him along, he wouldn't have the face to go. The strong always possess pride and dignity. He didn't want to be led by others. Both of them understood that after living for so many years, there was nothing they hadn't come to terms with. Jian Wushuang's ability to defy the heavens and the hope of successfully merging with the Tao seemed doubtful. They didn't inquire further, just offered their blessings. Jian Wushuang also smiled and nodded, accepting this goodwill. His path to merging with the Tao was still quite long. Firstly, achieving completion and perfection, then eliminating the karmic obstacles and thus the Tao merge. For one epoch, he lacked confidence. From weakness to the present, in terms of normal time progression, it had only been several 100,000 years. But when considering the flow of time, especially during the time spent in the starry sky, it might have been several epochs. His mindset had already undergone a profound change. Especially in terms of the perception of time, one epoch wasn't really that long. Jian Wushuang had always been in a hurry, particularly in terms of time, racing against the clock, not daring to waste a moment. After successfully merging with the Tao in the future, he planned to rest for a while. Not too long, just a few thousand years would do. He would calm his mind, leave the Qixin Temple, and visit the Great Sea region. Returning to the world he once knew, he would see those old friends. Later, Jian Wushuang suppressed this thought because Divine General Mayin had arrived. This time, the true body came. The vast aura emanating from the Divine General of Moyin made them both yearn and feel fear. The space trembled. This was the ultimate emperor, standing at the peak of the emperor realm. Congratulations! You've successfully passed the 3 bridges. Divine General Mayin spoke gently. The 3 were quite surprised. In the past, the voice of Divine General Mayin was either icy or imposing. Why was he so amiable this time? Could it be because they passed the test? But they didn't think much about it. They couldn't imagine that Divine General Mayin couldn't fulfill his promise to them initially. Divine General Mayin looked at the 3, their eyes full of hope. He felt a bit reluctant deep down, but there was no other way. He had just recovered, and his treasures were limited. Do you know what these 3 bridges represent? Divine General Mayin didn't mention rewards and began to explain the origin of these 3 bridges. The 3 were clueless, but they weren't in a hurry either, because they were also curious about it. Divine General Mayin carefully explained the origin of the 3 bridges to them. It turned out that this place was once a testing ground for potential envoys. As long as they passed, they could become envoys under the command of Qixin Temple. Each examinee had to be at least a Tier 6 emperor. Once they passed, they could become envoys, and with a series of training, they had the chance to become one of the 108 envoys. Of course, besides the core 108 envoys, there was also a position of stewards. These envoys would carry the identity of stewards of Qixin Temple while traversing the vast expanse of time and space. The status was lofty, but all were deputy envoys, destined to be by the side of the Qixin in the future. So, when the 3 bridges were set up initially, many Tier 6 emperors under the Universe Master came to challenge. However, at that time, the difficulty was higher than it is now. After all, this place had been abandoned for too long, and some tests had lost their effectiveness. After the explanation from Divine General Mayin, he asked, "Are you willing to become the most core members of the Qixin Temple?" Upon hearing this, the 3 were momentarily stunned, especially Dongxin and Wan Yen, almost nodding simultaneously. "I, Dongxin, am willing. I, Wan Yen, am willing." Both of them were very excited, the true core of the Qixin Temple. Who wouldn't be willing? Jian Wushuang stood on the side, watching these 2, sighing inwardly. They didn't know, but Jian Wushuang knew. The Qixin Temple didn't really have a core force. Divine General Mayin was probably just fooling the 2 of them. Now, in the entire Qixin Temple, the only person who dared to claim to be the core was Jinling. Back then, when they talked about building the Elder Palace, they directly broke away from the control of the 4 great temples. Now it had evolved into the 5th force. As for the so-called core mentioned by Divine General Mayin, in ancient times, the envoys and divine generals were indeed the core, but that was with the backing of the Qixin and 3 divine masters. Now there's only Divine General Mayin and Lord Yunzhong. With just these 2, Jian Wushuang didn't look down on them. Even if they worked together, they weren't even enough to beat the Temple Master of the Azure Dragon Temple, yet they dared to claim to be the core of Qixin Temple. The most crucial thing was power. The power within the Qixin Temple. Outside the Azure Dragon Temple, it was currently ineffective in dealing with external matters, and naturally, almost no one sought refuge in the Azure Dragon Temple. Inside the White Tiger Temple, many pledged allegiance to the White Tiger Temple, flaunting their prowess in the four great secret realms because of the significant influence of the White Tiger Temple. The Vermilion Bird Temple, responsible for selecting trial participants and external plunder missions, held considerable power. Although it might not be explicitly stated, the inheritors of the Grave God Mountain, apart from those who were originally powerful emperors, mostly came from the Vermilion Bird Temple. They still harbored some goodwill towards the Vermilion Bird Temple. Those who joined voluntarily were often bestowed with many treasures. After all, the Vermilion Bird Temple controlled the original realm, where 90% of the treasures from the Qixin Temple were stored. The remaining 10% was split, with half in the hands of Jinling and the other half in the hands of the White Tiger Temple. Although Zhu Yi was somewhat rigid, she treated her subordinates fairly well, attracting many inheritors. As for the Xuanwu Temple, no comments could be made as they hadn't made an appearance. If we consider only the four temples, most people would choose either the White Tiger Temple or the Vermilion Bird Temple. The new power, Elder's Palace, located in the northern border of the Heavenly Realm, had the strongest control, and there were also numerous treasures. Many inheritors sought refuge there, but their strength was somewhat average, mainly consisting of individuals with mediocre aptitude. This was also due to the accumulation of profound treasures provided by Jinling, attracting elites. As for Divine General Mayin, relying solely on the empty words of being a core force trying to deceive people. Only newcomers like Dongxin and Wan Yan might believe such nonsense. Jian Wushuang, however, was not so easily fooled. Divine General Mayin also noticed Jian Wushuang and asked, "And you, Jian Wushuang?" "Divine General, Lord Wu's has shown me favor, and I have promised to stay in the Elder's Palace," Jian Wushuang respectfully replied. Divine General Mayin gave a faint smile and said, "Almost forgot. You do have some connection with Lord Wu's." Since Jian Wushuang showed no intention to go with him, Divine General Mayin didn't insist. And that's because Jian Wushuang's benefits lay with Wu's. "Since you two have agreed, carry these two tokens with you. I have avatars spread across the four great secret realms. If you have any needs, you can contact me at any time. Now I will send you out of this place." Yes, Dongxin and Wan Yan were very pleased. They had found a backing. The thoughts of the older generation were simple. No matter where you go, without a backing, you never feel secure. Now that they had support, they felt more confident. The three of them saw darkness before their eyes, and when they appeared again, they were in the demon ceiling space. "Dongxin and Wan Yan, stay here. Jian Wushuang can leave now. Brother with Zhou is waiting for you in the outside world." Yes. Finally, they left. It had probably been at least tens of thousands of years in this place. After leaving the Demon Sound Hall, they arrived at the top of the Demon Sound Mountain. Many people sensed Jian Wushuang's presence and gathered around. "Fellow Taoist Wushuang, why did you come out so quickly?" asked Emperor Zhu Tian with some surprise. Jian Wushuang was startled for a moment. In fact, tens of thousands of years were considered a short time. Someone interjected from the side, "There must be time acceleration in the Demon Sound Hall." In reality, time acceleration was rare. When crossing the narrow bridge, Jian Wushuang didn't pay attention to time. There might have been time acceleration at that moment. The rest of the time, he wasted a lot of time on the dim path when crossing the first bridge. People were discussing, eager to know what happened inside. It wasn't that Jian Wushuang was unwilling to talk. It was that he couldn't. Just then, Wu's walked over. "Humph. If you want to know, go in and see for yourselves." Wu's expression was somewhat indifferent. Ignoring the others, he came to Jian Wushuang and said in a slightly softened tone, "Jian Wushuang, come with me." "Yes." Seeing Wu's expression, the others dared not approach, and they could only leave dejectedly, finding a place to continue their cultivation. Since Jian Wushuang and the others entered, several more individuals entered the Demon Sound Hall. However, only Jian Wushuang emerged from it. They never expected Jian Wushuang to be the first to enter and ultimately the first to come out. Following Wu Zhuo down the Demon Sound Mountain, Jian Wushuang's mood was exceptionally good. The origin source of the universe. It would soon be in his hands. It seemed he would have to seclude himself again. In his joy, he forgot why Wu Zhuo had such a stern expression on his face. Leaving Demon Sound Mountain, the two of them arrived at the most prosperous island in Yuanyang Lake. This was the largest island on Yuanyang Lake. Yuanyang Island. Fully equipped, it resembled the scale of a small city, with many practitioners above, almost all emperors, and their strengths were not weak. There were few tier 2 or 3 emperors, most were tier 4 emperors. Jian Wushuang and Wu Zhuo strolled around, entering a massive estate. This was Wu Zhuo's private mansion, seldom visited by others. Upon entering, they were met with a massive stone monument, on which were engraved thousands of names. Seeing the monument, Wu Zhuo spoke, "Wait for me." Then he took out 3 sticks of incense, lit them and placed them in the censer. "Jian Wushuang, come over." Wu Zhuo turned and beckoned to Jian Wushuang, who was still standing at the door. Approaching, Jian Wushuang noticed that the monument was made of universe crystal. Judging by its scale, it was 10 times larger than the one he obtained. Rows of names were engraved from top to bottom. Surprisingly, Wu Zhuo's name was among them, which puzzled Jian Wushuang. Offering incense to oneself? That's quite absurd. Wu Zhuo self-mockingly smiled. Jian Wushuang, standing aside, dared not laugh. Names above, some are my junior disciples, while others are my senior brothers or sisters. Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised to hear this. He hadn't expected Qixin to have so many disciples. On the solitary bridge, he had encountered numerous illusions, and during Qixin's teachings, the area below was filled with people. Now it seemed that they were all disciples of Qixin. Wu Zhuo continued his narration, his expression tinged with sadness. "The reason I engraved my name here is that I had long thought of myself as dead, having died by my master's side, forever accompanying the old man." At this point, tears welled up in Wu Zhuo's eyes. Seeing the other so emotional, Jian Wushuang began to curse Jinling in his heart. This was the sole survivor among Qixin's disciples, and yet he was still expelled. Jinling truly wasn't a decent entity, not to mention ancient times, even in the present. In a sect or faction, if the master fell, and the senior brothers and sisters were no more, then the sect would belong to the only surviving disciple. If there were still many people within the sect, a selection would be made from among the strong. But Jinling did the opposite. First, Wu Zhuo was expelled, and then he was thrown into the Earth Realm's wilderness. Wasn't this inhumane? However, this sympathy didn't last long. Jian Wushuang learned an important piece of information from Wu Zhuo's following words. His universe origin source was gone. Not only his universe origin source, but also the inheritance of the universe masters of Dongshin and Wanyan had disappeared. Sorry about that. There was an issue with the passage, causing you to be able to return the same way. Jian Wushuang now understood. This wasn't Wu Zhuo's fault at all. It was his own problem. Indirectly, he had also trapped Dongshin and Wanyan. These two were also unlucky. When they crossed the second bridge, they both hoped to pass through on their own strength, only to be implicated by Jian Wushuang, and everyone was teleported out together. On the third bridge, the two struggled to get through with all their might. However, due to the existence of Jian Wushuang's clone, the promised reward was cancelled. Indeed, one cannot take shortcuts on the path of cultivation. A layer of dead ash covered Jian Wushuang's face. Wu Zhuo beside him thought Jian Wushuang was about to explode and quickly said, "But rest assured, I will make it up to you. I don't have the complete origin source of the universe, but with the incomplete one, I can probably give you about 20%. Jian Wushuang turned to look at Wu Zhuo but didn't say a word. Now he felt as if he had eaten a fly. Felt awful. Wu Zhuo was also afraid that Jian Wushuang would collapse and continued, "Whatever you need, just speak up. I will satisfy anything you can meet quickly." Originally, it was a complete universe origin source. Now, no interest remained. He just wanted the complete origin source of the universe. But this matter couldn't be entirely blamed on Wuxia. The other party was also passing the buck, probably finding an excuse not to give up the treasure. This time he really misunderstood. Zhenling did intend to give him the origin source of the universe. If he were to blame anyone, he could only blame himself. If his main body entered the second prison, Wuxia and Shanjun would rescue him at the first moment, and the flames could extinguish his dispersion but not directly eliminate his main body. The clone was too weak, only at the peak of the Tier 4 Emperor. Wuxia was still watching him on the side, waiting for his response. Since Wuxia wanted to be the scapegoat, he wouldn't be polite. Can't have a falling out over treasures. He happened to be short of treasures right now and began to calculate the treasures he needed. The essence of all things. I need the essence of all things from a realm. Jian Wushuang spoke up. Wuxia took a deep breath. Although the essence of all things in one realm was precious, some Supreme Peak experts in the 4 great secret realms might not be able to obtain it. However, for him it was simple, he could just go to the Earth realm and fetch some. A drop of pure beast god blood. 200,000 cubic units of universe crystal. Jian Wushuang looked at the stone tablet and spoke. Even though a stone tablet was worth 100,000 units, it wasn't too harsh compared to what Wuxia still had in his hand. Wuxia felt a bit embarrassed about this. He didn't have many universe crystals, but he could manage to gather some. By the way, I need Lord Wuxia's help with something. My beast god weapon components were lost in the second prison. I don't know if I can retrieve them. Jian Wushuang asked uncertainly. Wuxia, hearing this, looked somewhat troubled. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "No problem. It's just a bit troublesome. You'll have to wait for a month. Then I'll trouble you." Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude. Wuxia revealed a slightly embarrassed smile and said, "This time it was my negligence. It should be done. I'll wait for Lord Wuxia's message. After a month, come here to find me." Then the two bid farewell. Before leaving, Wuxia gave him a token. It was a golden token of the enforcement hall, something only the hall master and a few deputy hall masters possessed. Knowing that Jian Wushuang would be moving around the northern border of the heavenly realm, Wuxia handed the token to him. With this token, he could move freely throughout the entire northern border. Jian Wushuang was quite pleased with this. He was actually planning to go to the northern borders mines to find Gong Miaoi's father. He initially thought he could obtain a complete universe origin source, and his sword Dao could smoothly break through. He wouldn't have to bother with such a trip. Now, it seemed he had to go in person. In his quest for those treasures, the array of items he desired was quite comprehensive. The universe crystal, needless to say, was indispensable, providing significant assistance at any level of cultivation. As for the beast god blood, it was reserved for his future divine body. After breaking through 50,000-fold, conventional treasures wouldn't be sufficient for further enhancement of the divine body. Most of the required items were related to the beast god. The blood of the beast god would play a significant role after reaching 50,000-fold in his divine body. This was something he couldn't acquire in the outside world. Only figures like Wuxia could obtain it from within. At present, his divine body reaching 50,000-fold wasn't a problem, and it was actually a consideration for the future. Another reason was that this drop of blood of the beast god could help him restore the origin source within the beast god weapon. He requested Wuxia's help in finding the beast god weapon, and judging by Wuxia's appearance, although he seemed troubled, there was hope. Jian Wushuang, originally distressed by the loss of the beast god weapon, initially thought that with a universe origin source he could recover it. However, now even the universe origin source was gone. If he couldn't retrieve the beast god weapon, it would be a significant loss for him. Once he found the beast god weapon, he could use the drop of blood of the beast god to locate several components. He would then request the assistance of several divine craftsman envoys to refine the beast god weapon. As long as he could restore about half of its power, it would be enough for him to dominate as an emperor. What Jian Wushuang didn't know was that the beast god weapon was actually on Wuxia. The apparent difficulty shown just now was nothing more than a performance. With this request, Jian Wushuang asked for fewer treasures. Currently, Wuxia had indeed gone to the Earth realm, but it was to search for the essence of all things. As for the 20% universe origin source, he would exchange it in the Elder Palace's treasury. Overall, the only thing causing Wuxia distress was the 200,000 cubic units of universe crystals. The universe crystal, a precious treasure, was rare in ancient times. Pulling out 200,000 units at once, even Supreme Peak experts would go bankrupt. Fortunately, Wuxia had collected quite a bit over the years. After Jian Wushuang left Yuanyang Island, he first went to inquire about the mines in the extreme north from Qiuhuang to find out the whereabouts of Nieyuan. Before he reached the mines, there was no sign of him. However, Nieyuan's personal sword, appearing in the mines, probably meant he was somewhere nearby. The fate of the Xianxia Palace was not good. It was said that the Xianxia ancestor was now guarding the Elder Palace. Most of the other Emperor-level experts were busy mining in the mountains. The once prestigious Xianxia Palace now looked like this. Jian Wushuang had always had a good impression of sword sections. When he met Wuxia again, he would definitely discuss the situation and see if they could restore the Xianxia Palace. Leaving from Qiuhuang, Jian Wushuang returned to the cave on Fenyang Island. When he returned to the cave, Gong Miaoyi was not there. Jian Wushuang wasn't surprised. After all, it had been tens of thousands of years since he left, and she probably went into seclusion elsewhere for cultivation. Jian Wushuang accelerated the flow of time to 1,000,000 times. For him, 1 month was equivalent to tens of thousands of years. During this time, he aimed to increase the power of his divine body to 50,000-fold. He didn't know if he could break through 50,000-fold, but even if he couldn't, he had to reach the completion stage of the 4th level. The divine body had its stages. For a Tao Lord, around 10,000-fold was generally sufficient. Some extraordinary individuals or second-generation descendants of influential families might elevate their divine bodies to 30,000-fold. As for the 50,000-fold divine body, most Tier 5 emperors hadn't achieved it. It typically required a hefty price for a Tier 6 emperor to elevate their divine body to 50,000-fold. Jian Wushuang, however, intended to reach the 50,000-fold divine body before the Tao merge. Yet, the final 1,000-fold increase proved exceedingly challenging. The treasures expended on the previous 49,000-fold divine body might not be sufficient to fill the gap. And this was just breaking through the 50,000-fold mark. The cost of advancing to a 60,000-fold divine body afterward could leave even Supreme Peak experts bankrupt. It's imaginable how substantial the price was when Bai Junwang elevated his divine body to 68,000-fold. Now, Jian Wushuang was left with nothing on him. Fortunately, Emperor Jueyun's sword, the Jueyun sword, was left in his cave for contemplation and wasn't taken along. Otherwise, the losses this time would have been even greater. For the current divine body enhancement, he could only use the 100 weeping vines stored inside the Skysight heavenly chessboard. Initially, he planned to keep nurturing them, but now it seemed unnecessary. Since they had already matured, it was better to just cut them. The vines, as thick as a bowl, were sliced into sections, and the white liquid inside carried a bitter taste. Frowning, Jian Wushuang forcibly refined it, transforming it into a force powerful enough to rupture his physical body. The force hovered in front of him, and Jian Wushuang carefully devoured and absorbed it. The divine body began to tremble, pulsating continuously. With each increase of 1 or 2 folds, though slow, there was progress. Throughout the day, he could ascend by roughly 10-fold, and in the later stages, about 1 fold per day. His divine body quickly approached the critical point, reaching 49,999-fold. He was so close. 1 more step, and he would attain the 50,000-fold divine body. But it was precisely this point that led him to swallow the entire vine of 100 weeping vines, roots and all. An entire 100 weeping vine. Jian Wushuang felt a twinge of heartache. Compared to the treasures he had spent before, the 100 weeping vines made them seem worthless. Heartache aside, Jian Wushuang showed no mercy. He thoroughly refined every root of the vine, transforming them into divine energy, and began absorbing it recklessly. His divine body underwent some changes as well, shifting from an illusory phantom to a substantial projection radiating a golden glow. That touch of golden divine body carried an infinite meaning. With a mental command from Jian Wushuang, the divine body reached its peak, unleashing an unprecedented power that rivaled the aura of a Tier 6 emperor. It was just a hair's breadth away from reaching the Tier 6 standard. 50,000-fold the divine body was achieved. Without any surprises, it was as simple as that. As long as you can throw in treasures into the ring, even a pig could enhance its divine body to a 1,000-fold, provided the physical body was strong enough. Thus, those who followed the divine body cultivation path needed least of all potential and intelligence. Many mediocre and weak second-generation descendants chose the divine body path. Once they reached 30,000-fold, they attained the level of a Tier 4 emperor. At 40,000 times, they directly rivaled a Tier 5 emperor. 50,000-fold could match a Tier 6 emperor. Of course, having a powerful backing was essential. If someone at the supreme peak valued their descendants highly enough to spend a considerable price to enhance their divine body, 50,000-fold would still be a limit. Raising the necessary funds again was a burden even for the supreme peak. Many essential treasures had to be sought in various secret realms, and there was no further room for improvement through purchases. Take, for instance, the 100 weeping vines. There was simply no one outside willing to sell them. The fallen Tier 5 emperor, in his demise, never revealed the 100 weeping vines. It wasn't that he was unwilling to sell. It was more likely that presenting them would jeopardize his own safety. There was a high risk of being killed for the treasure. Phew! Jian Wushuang rose slowly, clenching his fists. A formidable force surged, making it almost uncontrollable even for himself. His state of mind trembled. Indeed, it was a bit overwhelming, and I couldn't completely control it. Jian Wushuang was quite satisfied. He manipulated his power through familiarity. Although it was somewhat uncomfortable now, it was, after all, his power. He had improved in every possible aspect. In the realm where Divine General Main resided, the treasures he obtained ended up in the second prison. As for his cultivation realm, he reached the 9th level of the extreme Dao and had long since stabilized. As for the sword Dao, this time he didn't encounter any opportunities related to it, so there was no improvement. Moreover, this time, the so-called opportunity was quite dangerous, but the actual combat was minimal, mostly during a segment of intense fighting on the 3rd bridge, amidst a sea of blood mist. It was somewhat different from the life-and-death battles he experienced in the past, lacking significant pressure. Therefore, it didn't contribute much to his sword Dao. After spending such a long time, I haven't explored Fenyang Island yet. Jian Wushuang's thoughts stirred, recalling the 3 places that Qiu Huang had instructed him about. The caves on Fenyang Island were not considered. There was another place on the island to calm the mind. This time, his state of mind had indeed shattered, and it was time to recuperate. Excluding the accelerated time, there were about 10 days left until the agreed-upon day with Wuxia. He wasn't in a hurry, so he decided to go to the place where he could restore his mental state. North of Fenyang Island, on a mountain range spanning about 100,000 miles, there was a secluded valley. Mist lingered in the valley, seemingly ordinary. As Jian Wushuang stepped into the valley, before he could touch down, he was intercepted by someone. Dear friend, cultivating here for a month requires 100 million cubic units of godstones. The person blocking his way had a ruddy complexion, and there was an indescribable moistness in the corners of his eyes. When Jian Wushuang heard the price, his eyelids trembled. 100 million cubic unit of godstones for a month? Wasn't that extravagant? Who could afford to cultivate at such a price? 100 million cubic godstones did not mean 100 million pieces of godstones, but it meant 10 billion pieces of godstones. 100 million cubic unit godstones for a month. Even a Tier 5 emperor would find it challenging to afford, and a Tier 6 emperor would feel the pinch. The crucial issue lay in the fact that Jian Wushuang currently didn't possess a single godstone on him. All his 100 weeping vines had been used up, and the only valuable possession on him was the Jueyun sword. However, this sword was a gift from Yang Sanmu, and he couldn't just use it as collateral. Senior, the demon sound mountain charges 100 million godstones. How can it be 100 million cubic here? Jian Wushuang was somewhat incredulous. If it were truly 100 million cubic godstones, there would likely be very few individuals in the Elder Pavilion who could afford to cultivate here. Even Wu Zhu didn't dare to seclude himself in this place. Perhaps the other party was charging based on the individual, and the core figures of the Elder Palace entering this place probably didn't need so many godstones. After all, everything here was created by the Zhenling from the treasure vault. Zhenling didn't need these godstones, and the ones collected would probably end up within the Elder Palace. TSK. Demon Sound Mountain is Demon Sound Mountain. This is Fenyang Island. In the heavenly realm, there are no more than 3 places more suitable for cultivation than here. Especially with the hot springs, they can soothe the mind and are a treasure in themselves. Of course, it can't compare to Demon Sound Mountain. Seeing Jian Wushuang's difficult expression, the man frowned slightly, his tone turning colder. He straightforwardly asked, "Could it be that you don't have the money?" Just as Jian Wushuang felt embarrassed, several figures flew in from the distance, formidable emperors who had come here for recuperation. All of them Tier 5 emperors. Haha! Who did I think it was? Turns out it's Taoist friend Wushuang. What's the matter? No money to get in. The arrival was none other than Tian, who was very familiar with Jian Wushuang. Seeing Jian Wushuang in such a predicament, the heart of Tian was filled with joy. Tian, my friend, what's this? The Tier 5 emperor who presided over the place glanced at Tian and the others, ignoring Jian Wushuang. Originally thinking of making some gains from Jian Wushuang, it now seemed like he had encountered a pauper. The aura of Emperor Tian was somewhat weak. He had come here for recuperation, but seeing Jian Wushuang in this state, his shattered state of mind suddenly recovered most of its strength. Once upon a time, Jian Wushuang was also his heart demon. And now, not only did he overcome his heart demon, but he also reached the peak level of Tier 5 peak, officially catching up to Emperor Wanxing. The once dazzling Hu Qing was now nothing more than a peak-level Tier 5 emperor. Inside the Elder Palace, he had joined forces with a palace master, securing a strong backing. In terms of strength, he naturally believed he was much more powerful than Jian Wushuang, who haven't even integrated the Dao. In terms of background, he had investigated Jian Wushuang and found only some connection with Wu Zhuo. Although Wu Zhuo was somewhat special, he was not the palace master of the Elder Palace after all. With both background and strength overwhelming Jian Wushuang, he was naturally delighted. Especially now, seeing Jian Wushuang unable to even produce the entrance fee, he became even more delighted. Sigh. This time I fell on the 47th floor in the Beiwang Tower, suffered some injuries, but seeing an old friend here, for some reason, I suddenly feel much better. Tian turned to look at Jian Wushuang, revealing a sneer. The Tier 5 emperor who guarded this place, upon hearing these words, couldn't help but admire. Tian, my friend, truly remarkable. I've lived countless epochs and only reached the 47th floor. You've surpassed me so quickly. Your future is boundless. The strength of Emperor Tian was indeed impressive. The Beiwang Tower, consisting of 99 levels layers, was comparable to the Grave God Mountain. Reaching the 40th level meant being on par with a Tier 5 emperor. At the 45th level, one possessed the peak combat power of a Tier 5 emperor, while the 47th marked the limit for a Tier 5 emperor. Of course, there were some exceptional individuals who could reach the 48th or even the 49th level, defying the norm. Every 10 levels served as a threshold, and reaching the 50th level required the prowess of a Tier 6 emperor. The Tier 6 emperors here were not the mediocre ones found in the 4 great secret realms but complete origin source Tier 6 emperors. Although inheritors could engage in cross-dire battles within the 4 great secret realms, facing an emperor with a complete origin source was still a challenge beyond their reach. In the current 4 great secret realms, emperors with complete origin sources were either inheritors or ancient beings within the Elder Palace. Crossing tiers was still a considerable gap. The group of old folks who revived in the Elder Palace were all formidable experts, each a second-grade origin source Dao Harmony Dao Emperor. They were not the kind of Emperor Ctian encountered in the four great secret realms or the original universe, those third or even fourth grade origin source Tao emperors who were far less threatening. Those individuals either dispersed or ventured into the four great secret realms, reaching a point of self-reliance. Strength was everything. Just like now, Jian Wushuang, a Tao lord, had no face at all in front of these individuals. Since you're an old friend of Ctian, you can come in with him, Emperor Ctian quickly said with feigned sincerity. But the rules are rules. I'll cover the expenses. Saying this, he handed over a mustard seed. The two exchanged pleasantries, and the Tier 5 Emperor accepted it. The Emperor in charge here, and the one behind Ctian, belonged to the same faction. The Godstones were like going from one pocket to the other. Jian Wushuang stood to the side, his face darkened. Did Ctian have to react like this? Back then, he didn't seem to have embarrassed the other party so much. It was as if he couldn't afford the money. If it weren't for losing all the treasures, he really wanted to throw Godstones at Ctian's face. How about it? Wushuang, aren't you coming in? Ctian looked at Jian Wushuang with a face as black as ink, feeling quite pleased. Jian Wushuang coldly said, "No, I'm afraid going in will disturb my state of mind again." Haha, why would that be? Brother Wushuang, you have extraordinary talent. How could you be demoralized? Ctian laughed heartily. The Tier 5 Emperor presiding over this place also realized that Ctian was intentionally embarrassing Jian Wushuang. Seeing the triumphant expression on the other's face, Jian Wushuang really wanted to go up and beat him up. However, if he started a fight here, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Right now, he was alone. Ctian initially thought it was almost time to go in and was about to enter directly. Just now, he saw Jian Wushuang, thinking about how to mock him, almost forgetting the familiar aura of the beast god weapon that he knew so well. Only now did he notice that Jian Wushuang didn't have that aura. This surprised him. He had always been keeping an eye on the beast god weapon. Although he now possessed even the eternal treasure, the uniqueness of the beast god weapon was widely recognized. Over the years, he had searched in the heavenly realm and even obtained another component of the beast god weapon through the support of his forces. The skull of the beast god. With a significant increase in his consciousness and thought power, his greed for the beast god weapon grew even stronger. He even secretly thought about dealing with Jian Wushuang. But he never found a suitable opportunity. Now, encountering Jian Wushuang, he discovered that the beast god weapons on Jian Wushuang's body had disappeared. This kind of treasure usually wouldn't leave its owner. How could it disappear? With so many people around and prying eyes, he didn't dare to ask too much. Whoosh! A rift appeared in space, and a woman with an unparalleled beauty walked out of it. Jian Wushuang. The newcomer was astonished upon seeing Jian Wushuang. The person who emerged from the rift was none other than Gong Miaoyi. Gong Miaoyi? Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised and asked, "How did you end up in there?" Gong Miaoyi smiled faintly, exuding charm, and said with amazement, "Don't you know that after going to the Beiwang Tower, everyone comes here for recovery? In the valley, one could not only restore their mental state but also rejuvenate their origin source and even their divine body. It was a sacred place for cultivation." Taoist Miaoyi. It seemed like even Emperor Ctian recognized the other person, which surprised Jian Wushuang. Gong Miaoyi remained unmoved, saying casually, "Ctian." What surprised Jian Wushuang even more was that a Tier 6 Emperor walked out of the crack afterward, and Gong Miaoyi directly hooked her arm around his. Jian Wushuang was utterly speechless. He wasn't even gone that long, and she was already taken by someone else? Master! Seeing the newcomer, Emperor Ctian respectfully bowed down. The Tier 5 Emperor who presided over this place approached with even more flattery. On the side, Jian Wushuang stood like a fool. Once again, he had been played by Gong Miaoyi. No wonder the thought power avatar inside her had disappeared. It turned out the Tier 6 Emperor had removed it. What's more surprising was that this Tier 6 Emperor was Ctian's master. He felt like an outsider now, standing aside in silence. In the end, Gong Miaoyi walked forward, bidding Jian Wushuang a farewell that lacked warmth. No wonder, he discovered in his cave that Gong Miaoi had even taken his meditation cushion. She had indeed found a strong support. Out of all people, she had to choose his mortal enemy. If he had known, he would have offered Gong Miaoi to Wuxia. Judging by Wu's appearance, he didn't seem like a lecherous person. Alternatively, he could have gifted her to the old man with goat horns. But now, she had flown right into the hands of his adversary. Jian Wushuang felt quite wronged. After all, he was the one who brought her here. He still remembered the first time Gong Miaoi came to the Elder Palace, looking as clueless as a country bumpkin, cultivating under a tree. Now, she had undergone a complete transformation, freely entering and leaving this valley that had once intimidated him. What was going on? After everyone had left, Jian Wushuang had no mood to go inside. However, upon hearing Gong Miaoi mention that the emperor who went to the Beiwang Tower would come to this place, he was genuinely interested. Kid, you have no chance now. Brother Tian brought you in just now. If you don't enter, it will cost you 100 million cubic godstones. The Tier 5 emperor presiding over the area spoke with a cold expression. Jian Wushuang felt somewhat resentful and said, "What about Gong Miaoi? How did she get in?" Hearing this, the Tier 5 emperor sneered. "You comparing yourself to her? You have to pay to enter, but not only does she not need to pay, she also gets a substantial reward. Do you understand?" "I don't understand." Jian Wushuang left without another word. Indeed, he didn't understand. This kind of sycophantic behavior seemed low-level, especially selling one's own body. In his view, it was a foolish act that inflicted significant damage to one's state of mind. He left directly, heading towards the Yuanyang Island. Jian Wushuang decided to take a look at the Beiwang Tower. Many seemed familiar with the tower, but he was somewhat ignorant about it. All he knew was that it was a temporal treasure, containing a complete universe origin source. Apart from that, his knowledge was limited. He wondered if there was an entrance fee to the Beiwang Tower. Being penniless was truly terrifying, especially in the Elder's Palace, where one couldn't go anywhere without money. Jian Wushuang didn't want to experience the awkward situation that happened on Fenyang Island. Though he had a thick skin and didn't care much, he still didn't want to embarrass himself. Strength was the ultimate language. If someone was stronger, insults could be endured, but once his strength surpassed the opponent's, he would retaliate with force. It was that simple. Having sensed the aura on Tian, he noticed it belonged to the beast god weapon, stronger than before. It indicated that Tian had acquired components of the heart beast god weapon. Jian Wushuang needed to figure out how to deal with the beast god weapon in Tian's possession. Kill. However, that wasn't possible here in the Elder's Palace. He hadn't reached the point where he could act recklessly. If he were still allied with Xinling, he could coordinate from within, but he had decided to completely sever ties with Xinling. There was no way to proceed like that. He could only resolve it from within. He didn't know if the Elder's Palace had an arena like the one in the Xianxia capital. A life and death battle. Winning meant gaining everything, while losing meant death. It was a great place, but unfortunately, the Elder's Palace didn't have such a facility. Jian Wushuang arrived at Yuanyang Island and walked into the city. As soon as he entered, he sensed two familiar auras. Dongxin and Wanyan. He didn't expect these two to leave the demon sealing space so quickly. It made sense. He had lost his universe origin source, so the other party's universe inheritance naturally fell apart. However, he didn't know if they were aware that everything was related to him. If they found out, contacting them in the future might become difficult. He had to be cautious. But the two auras were approaching him, having noticed him. Jian Wushuang felt a bit awkward, unsure whether to stay or leave. Finally hearing that familiar hearty voice, he breathed a sigh of relief. "Old friend Wushuang." Wanyan stepped up to Jian Wushuang, his smile as warm as ever. Though Dongxin maintained some aloofness, he too was pleased to see Jian Wushuang. Only then did Jian Wushuang truly relax. "Two Dao friends. How did you end up here?" Jian Wushuang avoided asking about the affairs in the demon sealing space. Dongxin revealed a smile and exclaimed, "Haha! If you can come, why can't we? Of course, it's for Beiwang Tower. Let's go. Find a place to settle first. This is not the place for conversation, Wang Yan reminded, then took Jian Wushuang to a magnificently decorated tavern. The place was somewhat similar to what he had encountered in the mundane mortal world, surprising him that such a place existed on Yuanyang Island. Upon entering, they were led to the largest private room. The selection of drinks was extensive, each item a precious treasure. The beverages on their table alone probably cost no less than 10 million godstones. I'll treat this time, don't fight me for it. Wang Yan glanced at Dongxin, then turned to Jian Wushuang, fearing someone might compete with him. Jian Wushuang had no intention of competing. He truly had no money. As long as they didn't make him pay, he was fine with anything. The three sat down, and after 3 rounds of drinks, they began discussing the events that had transpired since Jian Wushuang's departure. Both Wang Yan and Dongxin had joined the ranks of Divine General Mayin, becoming candidates for envoys or messengers. They obtained numerous treasures and, just as Wuxia had mentioned, the universe inheritance was no more. However, an unexpected gain occurred. Besides the treasures they received, they also obtained a unique opportunity. After reaching the rank Tier 6, they reached the Grave God Mountain and could acquire the inheritance of the Qixin Temple. Jian Wushuang's eyes nearly popped out when he heard those words. Qixin's inheritance? So far, it seems that no one has obtained Qixin's inheritance, not even Shang. What stroke of luck did these two have to actually obtain Qixin's inheritance? Wang Yan noticed Jian Wushuang's astonishment, pressed his hand down and said, "Calm down. Although it is Qixin's inheritance, it's not entirely so." Not entirely? Jian Wushuang became even more puzzled. Yes, it's like this. Under Qixin's command, there were originally 3 divine masters, 18 divine generals, and 108 envoys. You know about this, right? Dongxin said. Jian Wushuang nodded. He knew this from the beginning. It wasn't a secret. These individuals, in ancient times, were the most elite forces under Qixin. The inheritance they received was personally prepared by Qixin. Some martial arts, secret techniques, treasures, and divine bodies were all the same. The inheritance we are to receive, although it's Qixin's inheritance, is not a direct transmission. It was originally bestowed by Qixin to those divine generals and envoys. After Dongxin Emperor explained this, Jian Wushuang got a rough understanding. The so-called Qixin's inheritance was, in fact, a legacy created specifically for the forces under Qixin in those ancient times. But this wasn't bad at all. Who was Qixin? He was a powerhouse that crushed everything, a dominant figure that made even universe masters shiver in fear. He felt genuinely happy for these 2 individuals and didn't have that sense of indebtedness anymore. After all, catching 2 people in a trap once would have been fine, but he had trapped them several times in a row. Speaking of which, I have to thank you, Brother Wushuang, for this. I'll toast to you for that. Wang Yan lifted his wine glass and took a sip. Jian Wushuang was surprised. Why is that? It has nothing to do with me. It relies on the strength of the 2 brothers. They had already started addressing each other as brothers in the joy of the moment. Brother Wushuang, you don't know? Divine General Mayin said that the reason the original rewards were cancelled this time was because of your selfless dedication, willing to give up the complete origin source of the universe. Wang Yan admired Jian Wushuang with admiration in his eyes. A complete universe origin source. To give it up just like that. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but feel a twinge in his heart. When did he give up? It was clear that he sacrificed his own origin source because, from within the passage, he returned to the narrow bridge. However, it was good that the other party could think this way. It seemed that Divine General Mayin was quite adept at manipulating people. This significant achievement could now be attributed to him. As the 3 conversed, they soon delved into discussions about Beiwang Tower. Dongxin shrugged. I'm not in a hurry to set out. Divine General Mayin reminded us to test our peaks at Beiwang Tower first. I plan to venture into Beiwang Tower for a while. Beiwang Tower. Through the window, they could directly see Beiwang Tower standing tall at the center of the city, the brilliant universe master treasure. A vast and mighty power emanated from it. Dongxin, with your current strength, You might be able to break through to the 60th floor once you enter. 60 floors were comparable to the supreme peak. Jian Wushuang found it somewhat unbelievable. Since these two left Demon Sound Mountain, their tone had become much more assertive. Considering the time that had elapsed since Dongshin's breakthrough, even if the two had secluded themselves for 1,000,000 years after he left, it was impossible for them to improve so much. Could it be? Jian Wushuang thought of something. Temporal treasure. Perhaps these two obtained a special eternal treasure, giving them such confidence. Dongshin humbly said, 60 floors are a bit challenging. With my current combat power, reaching the 56th floor would be satisfactory. But Wan Yen, I'm afraid breaking through 50 floors won't be a problem for you. Breaking through 50 floors as a Tier 5 Emperor represented the level of a Tier 6 Emperor, which was already quite impressive. Beiwang Tower, unlike Demon Sound Mountain and other places, relied entirely on strength to ascend. Grand Yen Immortals reached the 10th level. Dao Lords progressed from the 10th level to the 20th. Tier 3 Emperors from the 20th to the 30th level. Tier 4 Emperors from the 30th to 40th. Tier 5 Emperors from the 40th to 50th. Tier 6 Emperors from the 50th to 60th. At the Supreme Peak, from the 60th to 70th. There were no recorded levels beyond the 70th floor. It was estimated to be the Universe Master. Wanyan lowered his voice and said slowly, Old friend Wushuang, do you know at which level Divine General Mayin reached? The 70th level? Jian Wushuang guessed. The strength of Divine General Mayin was formidable, giving him the impression that it was much stronger than Lord Yunzhong. He should be able to reach the 70th level, representing the pinnacle of the Supreme Peak. Wan Yen shook his head, indicating that Jian Wushuang had guessed wrong. Originally, he wanted to create some suspense, but unexpectedly, at this moment, Dongshin interjected. The Demon Sound Divine General has reached the 74th level. In the history of Beiwang Tower, there is even a legendary figure who reached the 86th level. After the shock subsided, Jian Wushuang thought of who that legendary figure might be. However, with this information, it became clear that reaching the 70th level did not correspond to Universe Master Cultivation. Otherwise, reaching the 86th level would be too outrageous. Speaking of it, I truly envy the ultimate Tao. The later stages reflect the immense power of the ultimate Tao even more. Wan Yen also added, if one passes all of the Beiwang Tower's 99th level, they would have the strength of the 3 Divine Masters to pass all. Surpassing the 80th level reaches the level of the Universe Master. A Supreme Peak being breaking through to the 86th level is simply unimaginable. Just like old friend Wushuang, who defies the heavens as a Tao Lord. That's right. With that said, Jian Wushuang was no slouch either. Tao Lord had reached the 6th level proficiency. By the time he reached the status of Emperor, it was possible he could break Emperor Jueyun's record. 86 levels. Back then, saying Emperor Jueyun rivaled the Universe Master was modest. The 3 of us, shall we give it a try? Inspired by the idea, all 3 were eager to test their strength. There were still 2 days left until the agreed-upon time with Wuxia. Jian Wushuang shook his head and said, I still need some time. There are some things I need to handle. Then the 2 of us will go explore first. Okay. Jian Wushuang stood up and saw the 2 off. When Wu's treasure arrived, after devouring that 20% of the universe origin source, enhancing his strength further, he would go to Beiwang Tower. As for heading north, now that Gong Miaoyi had damn well betrayed them, he wasn't in a hurry anymore. When the time came, he would go alone to the mines and find Nie Yuan. After all, imitating that special Sword Dao origin source, Nie Yuan's internal origin source of Sword Dao was probably even more powerful than Gong Miaoyi's. It would help him on a larger scale. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang prepared to leave first and head to Wu's mansion to wait for him. This place wasn't suitable for cultivation, and even if he had only 2 days of leisure, he didn't want to miss them. Just as he was about to get up and leave, a Tier 3 Emperor approached respectfully. Senior, you have spent a total of 40 million Godstones in this temple. Oh no! Jian Wushuang could only take out the token given to him by Wuxia and press it down. At first, the other party didn't believe it. The token of the Hall Master of the Enforcement Hall. A force that made people tremble even in the Northern Territory. Senior, please wait a moment. I need to confirm. If the token was genuine, then the money would be waived. If it was fake, Jian Wushuang must leave. Jian Wushuang returned to the room, cursing Wan Yen in his heart. It seemed that the other party was too happy and forgot. Who would have thought that Jian Wushuang, a powerhouse comparable to a Tier 6 emperor, couldn't even produce tens of millions of godstones? It's truly embarrassing. In the heavenly realm, especially within the Elder Palace, the value of a Tier 5 emperor was not low. Tens of millions of godstones could be easily produced. Even if there were not so many godstones, there were some treasures that could be pawned. Unlike Jian Wushuang, who directly produced the token of the Hall Master of the Enforcement Hall. Seeing the token was like seeing the true form of Wuxia. If the token was genuine, it would be like killing an ant, forcing an emperor to take action. A pointless endeavor. But other than this token, Jian Wushuang only had the Jueyun sword left. He couldn't possibly mortgage the Jueyun sword. It was the sword of Emperor Jueyun. A sword so revered that using it as collateral for the drinks they consumed would be an outright insult to the way of the sword. Colossal insult. Jian Wushuang's respect for the Tao of the sword had never wavered, and such an act was simply unthinkable for him. However, upon further consideration, he deemed it even more disgraceful to mortgage his own power of all things. No different from what Gong Miaoyi would do. The Tao should not be taken lightly, especially in the Elder Palace. Jian Wushuang would never casually jest with his origin source. In no time at all, a Tier 3 emperor walked in, visibly anxious, and carefully handed the token to Jian Wushuang. Shortly after, a Tier 5 emperor arrived, personally apologizing to Jian Wushuang. Despite the apologies, Jian Wushuang felt awkward and chose to leave hastily, saying little. He could imagine the thoughts racing through the mind of that Tier 5 emperor. Was it necessary to use Wu's token for a mere tab? Jian Wushuang did not linger and headed straight to Wu's mansion. The emperor guarding the place recognized Jian Wushuang at a glance and respectfully ushered him into the mansion. Upon entering the gate, Jian Wushuang noticed that the massive stone stele standing in the courtyard was gone. Even the incense burner and some decorations had been removed. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself, "It shouldn't be this bad." Did Wuxia really empty his coffers of 200,000 cubic universe crystals? Even the tombstones he had erected for his fellow disciples were dismantled to gather treasures for him. If that were true, it would be too tragic. Little did he know that the stele had been erected the day before by him. That was precisely the effect Wuxia desired. Feelings and emotions were not that profound. Among the disciples of Qixin, there were numerous universe masters, and Wuxia, a supreme peak, was inconspicuous among them. If it weren't for him being the last surviving disciple remaining, the formidable figures in the Qixin temple wouldn't have paid him any attention. Jian Wushuang was somewhat puzzled. In the beginning, all 18 divine generals could be resurrected, so why not revive some of Qixin's disciples? Wouldn't those individuals be more qualified to inherit Qixin's legacy? It seemed that this had something to do with the aftermath of resurrection. Jian Wushuang had guessed it right. The resurrected powerhouses would face 100 times more difficulty in advancing their cultivation realms in the future compared to those on the normal timeline. It could be said that their potential had diminished, making it impossible to surpass them. Jian Wushuang, the true form of Wu's, were approached, and he exclaimed, "What a coincidence! I just returned from the Earth realm, and here you are. I've been bored these days, planning to visit Lord Wu's place for a stroll. I didn't expect your speed to be so fast, Lord Wuxia. You're already back." Jian Wushuang laughed. He felt a bit awkward. To gather enough universe crystals for him, he even dismantled tombstones. Now he felt somewhat embarrassed, as if he couldn't wait for the appointed time. "Come, let's talk inside. I've acquired some excellent spiritual herbs from the Forest of Eternal Secrets, perfect for brewing a pot of good tea." Wuxia didn't show any signs of embarrassment. It was as if the tombstone had never been erected. Seeing that Wu Zhuo wasn't bothered, Jian Wushuang felt even less concerned. With good tea on offer, it was only right to savor it. Following Wu Zhuo into the main hall, the two sat facing each other at a table. On the top, several humanoid green fruits were placed. The fruits of all things? Jian Wushuang exclaimed. These were priceless items. Since the Forest of Eternal Secrets had been declared off-limits, these fruits hadn't appeared again. Back when the forest was open to the public, the value of the fruits of all things exceeded 10 billion cubic units of godstones, which equated to 1 trillion stones. Now they were priceless. He didn't expect Wu Zhuo to be so generous, directly using these to entertain him. At the same time, he worried if the treasures weren't complete, and this was just a way to dismiss him prematurely. This is your mustard seed, and the beast god weapons is among them. However, some other treasures have been damaged, leaving only the accessories of the beast god weapon, and its origin source has also been damaged. Wu Zhuo waved his hand, and the eye of the candle dragon, the armor of the candle dragon, the arm of the candle dragon, and the wings of the candle dragon floated towards Jian Wushuang. Seeing these items, Jian Wushuang felt a sense of joy. As long as the beast god weapons were fine, everything else was secondary. Let's have tea first. Wu Zhuo personally poured tea for Jian Wushuang, making him feel pleasantly surprised. After this series of gestures, if the other party hadn't collected all the treasures, he really wouldn't have the heart to demand them. Jian Wushuang took the cup and expressed his gratitude. Then, a hint of perplexity appeared on Wu Zhuo's face, and he said, "Ah, it's been a long time since I've leisurely enjoyed tea like this. The Earth realm is really chaotic this time."